Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:30. Let me call the meeting to order for the December 16th, 2014 meeting of Merrimack Planning Board. Let me remind everyone, as you come to provide testimony, make sure that your microphone's turned on, you speak clearly into it, and that you sign in on the clipboard. By way of announcement, the next Planning Board meeting is January 6th at 7:30 in this room. The next Bike and Pedestrian Subcommittee meeting is January 13th at 7:30 p.m. also in this room. Let me appoint Nelson as a voting member to fill in the vacant full member spot. And also, I see we've got quite a few people here tonight. I don't know if anyone came to listen to or offer testimony with respect to item 10 on our agenda, which is the Old Blood Properties Chestnut Hill subdivision near the middle school. That applicant has asked for a continuance of that project to our next meeting, and so there won't be any substantive discussion. When that agenda item comes, the Planning Board would take up that continuance, and we would hear that on January 6th, 2015. So I just wanted to tell anyone that, just in case you're here for that, so you don't wait for our entire meeting to realize late at night you missed it. Tim, is there anything that any announcements for Planning and Zoning Administrator's report?
Nothing tonight.
Are there questions by members of the board for the staff? Seeing none, that moves us right on to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion of the capital improvement programs for both the town and the school. And Tim tells me school gets to go up first today. Come on forward. And Matt, if cookies would help your presentation, we've got a few over here. Just say so.
I did spy those from afar.
No, spy them from near and come get some.
Yeah, I want to thank Tim and Paul McCallie for being so gracious as to let us go first. So I will not tie you up too quickly. My tact basically is to go through year 15-16 all the way down, and then to talk about the other items such as roofing, asbestos, paving, everything like that, kind of going across from 16-17 on. So I prepared this little. Everybody has to come with a PowerPoint nowadays, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Used in the old school, the ones that actually plug in.
Okay, you ready for me to begin? Okay.
Please do.
The first item we have on our CIP is a piece of HVAC equipment that's on top of the high school cafeteria. If it looks like it's from the Vietnam era, it's 1970s, that's because it is. It's a heat exchange unit that takes warm air out of the cafeteria, exhausts it, blows it back in. It's a unit that's been around for 30-some-odd years. It's getting to the end of its lifespan. There are no replacement parts available for it, so when something breaks down, something has to be hand fabricated or welded, and it's been reoccurring at a greater rate. So we have put this down on the CIP for 2015-2016 to be replaced. And notice its location. That's on the roof, and that's on the roof where we are planning on doing a roof replacement, which is the blue section, which is the next item. This section here is been off warranty since 2007, 2004. It's 336,400 square feet. The roofing that's going to be applied is a multi-layered ballasted roof. Right now we have the same up there. It has been problematic, and it makes sense to do that portion while we're doing the HVAC unit that is up on the roof itself. We have our maintenance facilities director, Tom Tussaud, goes over every inch of roof in the district, foot by foot, every single year, sometimes twice a year. He's brought me on the tour too. I'm not quite as enthusiastic, as I'm not as comfortable around heights, especially when you get up there. But we've walked around. We've just recently took a walk on the middle school roof, which is coming up shortly for replacement, believe it or not. But these are two sections that Tom feels need to be replaced. There's some leaking going on. There's some dampening of the insulation. When the insulation gets wet, it loses its R value. So you just take heat and you just open a window and there it goes. So this is on our roof replacement program, and it's scheduled for next year, budget year. Then we have an item that's been on the CIP for, gosh, probably as long as I've been here, 10 years plus. The consolidation of the special services and SAU offices. I figured I'd give you a map of where its location is going to be. You can see Babusick Lake Road, O'Gara Drive, that's going towards Babusick Lake Road. Merrimack High School is up there. Our central office, greenhouse, and this is just about around where one of the fields are. And so there's an acre of land that was taken by the town of Merrimack for taxes back in 1999 and was turned over to us by the town for the sum of $1, probably a couple of years later, because it was landlocked by our property. So it's flat. The lot is wooded, mainly pine. Soil conditions are such that if it's consistent with everything around it, are fairly easy as far as digging goes. Here is the floor plan that we've been working with for quite some time. It's still preliminary. The Planning and Building Committee that we have, the School District Planning and Building Committee, is reviewing this every single year. There are some changes that we may make to this. This was a means to get to an end as far as square footage goes. Right now, you know, we're housed in 2 residential homes, both in the 1970s, and have had a few issues with them. Hurricane Sandy was not kind to the special ed building when the roof blew off and all the water came in and ruined the entire first floor and put a couple of inches of water in. And then our building, quite short after that, I remember coming in early in the morning and I heard this hissing sound coming from down the hallway, and I paused and I said, that doesn't sound too good. I wonder what that could be. And it was kind of like I'm looking at the door and I hear it's coming from the bathroom. That can only be bad. So I walk up the hallway, open the door to find the supply pipe split from the toilet tank to the shutoff valve. and the water was just spraying out. So I held back the water with one hand as I turned off the spout, but it had probably been going on all night long, and it flooded the entire first floor and the basement. When I went down to my office, I had around 2 inches down there. So we have had our challenges in that building, and that was just one of them that was just too coincidental and too close to the last incident we had. But they are, have been used to their maximum capacity, capability, and at one point in time, it's going to be time for a change in a new office. And right now, this year, the item is placed on 2015, 2016. This is a capital improvement plan. It's not necessarily indicative of a spending plan. So what you see here was approved by the board in September, and as you know now, we're in the midst of budget season. Things get adjusted, things get taken away, things get added in. So what I'm showing you here I can't guarantee that all of them will be considered in the budget, but they're considered as far as the CIP as being valued as being done in the year 2015-2016. This is our technology infrastructure upgrade. We have well over 1,400 computers in the school district. We probably have around 30 computer closets with all the servers and wiring and cabling and switches that go with it. We're like a large corporation, basically. We run everything through the high school. That's the main hub of everything, and it goes out from there to all the various locations. And in order to keep everything running and going, we have to set aside a certain amount of money every year to take care of what needs fixing proactively. Sometimes we do it reactively, because this past week we lost a server over at Thorntons Ferry Elementary School. That was very unfortunate because we lost some valued work that was done by the teachers and by the students for around a 2-week span of period, and we couldn't get that back. So we're always looking at the error logs that pop up on the servers, and we try to attack them as they seem to be merited and stay ahead of the curve. But this is money that's each year you'll be seeing in the CIP, or maybe just transition into the operating budget, whatever the board feels fit to do. So it is for our technology infrastructure, the spread of Wi-Fi that's utilized all over the building, the access points by both students and staff. Now I'm going to talk about roofing. The next item we have is Reed's Ferry Elementary School roof. The yellow sections are the sections to be replaced. They are the 1997 additions that were put on. It is time for them to go and be replaced before we have some major issues. One of them is over the gym, and you never want to have any leakage in that area, because sustained leakage on a hardwood floor is not good for anything. Even if it's a catastrophic one overnight, it's ruined the next day. So we're looking at Reed's Ferry in 2016, 2017. 2018, 2019 for roofs. We're looking at Master Kohler Upper Elementary School, a few sections there. It's kind of funny when people think of a building having a flat roof, you just think of, one piece, that's flat all continually. But it's made up of several different sections and several different levels with various items on there as far as HVAC units and everything like that. And That's usually kind of a point of failure whenever you have a roof penetration. That's a potential point of failure, but these are the items right here that are going to be needed to be replaced in those years at the upper elementary school. And at Thornton's, by then, we're kind of mirroring what we did at Reed's Ferry School by doing the 97 additions at that point in time. Next year, it may be that Thornton's Ferry is the worser school than Reed's Ferry. This may change, but right now it appears that Thornton's Ferry has a little more life in it than does Reed's Ferry. They were both built at the same time. And then just to go full circle, and I didn't color everything yellow, we're looking at the middle school roof. It's off warranty in 2014, and we're looking at just the Section A. Section C is basically metal, and the other two sections don't seem to be as bad as Section A. Section A carries the majority of the HVAC equipment, and that isn't a ballasted roof. That's a membrane roof, standing seam. I mean, just the glued seam roof. It's a white membrane. There are some splits in the seams that are constantly repaired, and there are some splits that are not in the seams that have been happening that we have to, or the manufacturer or whoever we hire at this point in time, because it's off warranty, have to go in, cut off a section, and then bond and glue in another piece. It's much like a giant pool liner that covers your roofing area. The next item is one we started several years ago with the resolve to complete one day, and several years ago we never think we would be at this spot. So for 2016, 17, 18, we're looking at the last of the asbestos floor tiles in the entire school district. It's taken a long time. Sometimes this item gets put off. Sometimes we stick by the plan for 2 or 3 years. Depends on other items within the budget. But by the end of 2017-18, perhaps even sooner, the asbestos will be gone as far as the floor tiles go, and there'll be no known asbestos left in the district. That's not to say that there isn't some someplace. There could be some in, let's say, the window caulking. I know when we did the entrances to the Thornton's Ferry and Reed's Ferry, we did the additions, and we had to take out the old set of doors. And Tom Tussaud, who is very up on the asbestos program, had an inkling that the caulking could have asbestos, so we hired a firm to come down and do some testing, and lo and behold, Tom was right. There was asbestos in the caulking of the doors, so we had to have that abated too. So it was great resilient material used for a lot of uses, but unfortunately it had very severe side effects over the years that people have been dealing with and suffering with. So as far as we know, this is the last of it in our school district. Moving on, we'll talk about some paving, 2016-2017. The circle at Thornton's Ferry, which is on your left, and that dark black is all a mix of crack seal and just regular sealant. We've used that rubberized material that you pour into the seams, that if you go over it with a bicycle or something like that, you feel your front tire move and give all over the place. And we've had it sealed several times in those problematic areas. The picture on my left, as I'm looking at it on the computer, your right, I think, as you're looking at it on the screen. I could be wrong. Is the circle, and the other one is the lower parking lot. You can see where we have gone about and hired contractors to come in and fill those cracks and seams and whatnot to keep them from expanding. The issue, obviously, everybody knows, everybody is familiar with asphalt who has a driveway. You get a crack, water gets in, freeze, thaw, it splits, it breaks. So you have to keep up with that as long as you can, and then it reaches the point where it's no longer viable anymore. Like Reed's Ferry a few years ago, and we redid that parking lot. And then out in 1819, as far as pavement goes, we're looking at the upper elementary school and the Merrimack bus loop and the front of the school. This is in 1617 also. The picture of the long driveway, that's the bus loop that goes around the side of the high school. You can see we've had some challenges on the left-hand side where it drops off over into the lower slope. That's been undermined several times and repaired several times also, especially if you get further along and closer to the edge down by the back. It has been weakened, and we have saw cut that back and repatched it. The front entrance of the school, you can see that that's pretty bad, and we'll do our best to put some sealant and some crack fill on that and do some patching of the apparent potholes. Luckily, that's not in one of the crossing zones that we have to the front entrance, but nonetheless, people do walk over there if they go to other parts of the building. 2018, 2019. Here's the entrance to, that's the entrance to the Smith Gym. That's why we call it, Master Cola, because the upper elementary school is over the other side now because we put the secure entrance in. And if I could have backed away, there are a lot of cars in the area, you would have seen the same sort of cracking throughout the parking lot, and the way the drainage is collected and the way the parking lot has sunk and heaved over the years. It definitely needs to be reclaimed totally and drainage redone, which is in the CIP under the upper elementary school drainage. So we can go over here. Here's the School Street side. This is the side that abuts School Street. If you knew there was a School Street between this parking lot and the church parking lot, this is one that definitely has to be done also. And so we would do that in conjunction with the entrance portion and take care of the drainage issues in this parking lot. This is close to the playground, looking into the front entrance of the building, which is right near the nice silver Jeep over there with the black soft top. The next item I have is we're looking at the upgrading of the track, and we also have a field upgrade in the capital improvement program budget for 17-18. The track itself, to maintain what is there, would be around $250,000, perhaps more than that. It's a 6-lane track. It has to be repaired in the spring. It has to be repaired in the fall. Each repair job costs anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000. We have sections of the track that are actually, there can be a little hole in the track, and you can put your finger in there, and you can kind of lift it up like a a carpet that's not adhered to the floor. So when that happens, water gets in there and does its damage. But we do repair those holes. We'll cut out a square, and then we'll fill it with compound. The contractor does. We hire that out, and they'll seal it the best they can. But throughout the course of the years, that patch could last a couple of years. Then you have a corner that has a tendency to lift up, and then it's back to patching all over again. So this is just another view of the track if we were to do an 8-lane straightaway. In most of your NHIAA tournaments that are hosted, the dash portion of the event is usually done in groups of 8. So if we were to redo the track, it would kind of behoove us to get up to speed on that and put 8 lanes for the straightaway and just leave the 6 lanes going around. And of course, this doesn't address the artificial surface that could be placed in the center of the track that you see there. It would be made of the synthetic surface that we've looked at before at a cost of around $1,435,000. It's quite an expensive proposition. So it's out there in 2017, 2018, and being reviewed for its possibility of being done. It's not forever. It's good for 15 years. Then you pretty much have to do it over again. It allows you to use it 24 hours a day because you don't have to worry about the grass wearing away, it getting muddy. It rains, doesn't matter. The water wicks right through it, so you can use it right after a rain or during a rainstorm. The maintenance costs around the same for an artificial surface as does the grass surface, because you still have to have it groomed by a machine that fluffs it up, and there's little plastic pellets between the blades of the artificial surface that help the grass to stand up, and that has to be done a few times a year too. So there's no real savings in maintenance, and the only thing you do get is you get a lot more utilization. And with the shortage of fields in this town, that's something that some people covet, but it does come with a price. And that basically sums up our capital improvement plan from 15-16 to 2019-2020. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the presentation. It was great to have all the detailed information with some of the photographs and things that you shared. I do have a couple of questions, and I don't know if other members of the board do as well. With the first item that you mentioned, the high school's HVAC, is the planned replacement functionally the same, or is it an upgrade from what you have there?
It's going to be an upgrade, because what you have there you couldn't do today by code. It's going to be a separate ventilation system and a separate unit for the cafeteria, and a separate units that will push air into the cafeteria and the food preparation area. Right now, what this does is it takes air out of the cafeteria through a wheel, and it recycles it back into the building, and it's tempered, and you can't do that now by code.
Okay, so the exhaust air has to go away and the air-conditioned air has to come in?
Basically, yes, correct.
My interest wasn't so much in the process that the machine uses as much as just saying, in my very, very limited experience of being in there in the summer, it's barely effective as it is today. And obviously, it's a machine that's wearing out, but
Yeah.
it certainly doesn't overwhelm you as an effective air conditioner when you get in there in the summertime. So
No, it doesn't, nor does it push much heat in there, especially if you've been in a board meeting and it's 10 o'clock at night and people start to put their coats on. First they start with the gloves, then the coats kind of go on the laps, and before you know it, you lose all shame and you put your hat on. That's why we're so grateful that we have this room to meet in for our school board meetings, is we don't have to bring our long underwear with us anymore in the wintertime. It's very much appreciated.
that's excellent. So this new equipment is also the heating. It's not just air conditioning.
Yeah, it would perform kind of the same functions.
What's the fuel source for the heat?
Gas. We're all on natural gas, the entire complex,
Okay.
and Master Cola too. So it's a different kind of system with fins instead of a heat wheel. There's no real moving parts, but the fans and the exhaust and the intakes.
The only other comment that I have at the moment is I hope you're successful with the consolidation of the SAU offices. Having been to the office a couple of times and seen what it looks like, it's time and it's ready to do something about it. So it definitely needs to get done. I wish you luck on that. Do other members of the board? Oh, I'll come back to it. Other members of the board have questions, comments?
Matt, could I ask you on the subject of roofing, are you getting guarantees on these roofs?
Yeah, the roofs we're doing now are 35-year guaranteed roofs. I won't be around to be talking
No, I'm sure you
about
won't be
them
around, no one.
on the CIP. So,
But the question, therefore, really begs it regarding MMS, because that's not a 35-year-old building.
no,
Why is that roof requiring repair at town expense rather than at an insurance expense, if I may use that term?
well, when the middle school was built, it was a design-build program. That means you kind of fly the plane as you're building it. And, we developed the plans alongside of putting it together. So the number we had as a budget number was really tight. It was less than $17 million to build the building. And there's certain concessions that had to be made along the way. And the roof, unfortunately, was one of those concessions. It had a 10-year warranty. And it was kind of consistent with what we had done in the past, which is why we are where we are right now with replacing the current roofs. So it didn't really seem that far out of character. A 10-year warranty, usually you look to get 15 to 20 out of them. This one, after 10, 12, 13 years, it's time to be replaced.
But we have your assurance that everything in future will have 35-year warranties.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, that's the first one. Could I also ask, given that you showed us the picture of the special units, SAU offices, what's the square footage of the new building likely to be? Actual occupied square footage, so if it's multi-story, don't count, it needs to be counted twice.
Yeah, the occupied storage facility is around 8,000 square feet, of which, if I can go back to the picture, the conference room area, meeting room, let's see if I can get there real quick, is around 14, 15, 16, probably around 1,700 square feet of that is conference room and storage. The rest is offices, so it's 8,800 square feet total of office space.
I wish you luck with getting that bonded.
Thank you.
Nelson, you had a question?
Yes. Question Well, I wish you luck with that too. You've been here. Turn my mic on. I wish you luck with that too. I know you've been here a number of years with the same request, and the need hasn't gone away. And I agree with the need. The question I had to do with something I'm remembering about the roofs over there before. It had to do with the way they handled the runoff from the roof. That it was connected, I think, to the sewer system or something, or there was an issue that had to be
Yep,
corrected.
that is
And
correct.
I don't remember the issue. Could you help me out?
I will help you out with that. That's in 2018, 2019, and it's coupled with the paving of the upper elementary school and the drainage. Most of it we've tracked down, and by doing it internally, we've taken the roof drains and connected them up to the storm drain system. So we haven't had to go outside of the building. We've done it internally. But there are still a few pipes in that parking lot that have to be redirected, so to speak, into the stormwater drainage system as opposed to the source system.
Yeah.
And you look at a set of plans, and back in the 1940s, 1950s, we do have some plans, and it's rather sparse as to where things go. So it's basically going to be a dig around and kind of a archaeological kind of study to find out, is this a pipe that has stormwater or is this sewer? We still think there are a few that we haven't taken the load off of, and we're just going to have to find that out as we go through the reconstruction of the parking lot. But yeah, that's in there. That's in that $150,000.
It's still in there. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Desiree.
Hi, my comments are to the roofing as well. I have met with Tom Tussaud
Yes, he told
from
me.
last year
Yep.
when we went over it, and he does keep a very good record on all the roofs. I didn't go up with him on the roofs, but
Yeah,
we
he
went,
goes out to like 2030 if you've seen his list. So yeah.
he gave me a copy of it too. But the roofs, all the roofs that they're doing now are the new multi-layer roofs. A lot of the schools were built up in sections, so as the additions were added on to those ones, when those roofs come due, they're in smaller sections. The middle school, the other thing with using the membrane roofing on the middle school, I mean, there is a benefit. When I first sat, this is my third CIP that I've done with this board now. There is a benefit with the membrane roofing in that it's light, so it's less heat gain on it. In talking and sitting with Tom, the reason why it's important to switch over to the multi-layer roof, that the built-up unit that they're using, instead of doing membrane, is the warranty, and then all the equipment is on the roof on the middle school, and that's where this membrane is up there too. So it's more room for failure, and I don't think really anybody's goes out to 35 years. I mean, that's pretty substantial to get a warranty like that. So in meeting with them just to go over the roofs and find out why they didn't use EPDM, and I come from California, so we used a lot out there, but we didn't have stacks of snow where I was in California. So it was a learning experience, and I approve of his comments for
Yeah, I think Tom has come to a very good conclusion on how we should approach this, and you're right about the middle school roof, because it is the only building that has air conditioning throughout, and all the units are on top, so there is a lot of roof penetrations, and if you're going to have a point of failure, usually it's going to be around there. And but we are, like I said, seeing not some splitting of the seams, but between the seams we're seeing some stretching of the membrane material, so it's almost stretching like a piece of cheese might. It's an odd-looking condition.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we are cutting those out and replacing them with other sections and doing a patch, but Tom doesn't recall ever seeing anything like that, neither do I, but it's an area, and there's some other areas that are buckling up just a little bit too on that roof. It wasn't the cheapest roof out there, but it was a roof put on there via budget need, and therefore we sit here today looking at replacing it. So.
Thanks.
Lynn.
Matt, I've got two questions or two topics I want to talk about. One is the SAU building. Currently, you've got two houses that you're using with roughly, I'm guessing, somewhere in the vicinity of 1,500 square feet.
2,400 each.
2,400, yeah. If you count the lower level,
Okay. So you're,
because we're in the
Yeah, I know.
business office
Yeah, I know you
suite
are.
is in the lower level.
Yeah. you're more than doubling the space of the combined two. And I know you're crowded there, but my guess is you're using space someplace else that you're now going to be able to use in the new building?
It's in place.
If you've got 9,000 square feet in the new
Yeah.
building,
Right.
and you've got 4,500 square feet in the old building, I'm assuming you're not going to...
Oh, yeah, well, we have, we're utilizing the high school basement. You recall when we put the 2000 addition on the high school?
Yep.
Put a full basement down there, which was a good decision, whoever made that decision. I just came in there when it was a piece of sand, and Jim O'Neill said, you got to get this done by next September or else. And I said, okay, Jim, thank you. And went ahead and did the addition, but it did have a full basement. So we're putting a lot of our archival storage down there too. And like I said, part of the space eater in this building is the large conference room, which we die to have a conference room, because whenever we have staff meetings or anything like that, it always has to go in the high school conference room. Sometimes the high school conference room, especially around graduation time, is loaded up with caps and gowns and diplomas and everything like that. So we have to find another place in the district to do our meetings. Plus, there's some functions that are in the building currently, in other buildings currently, that we'd like to bring into the central office, like our Director of Technology and Library Media Services, Nancy Rose. We would like to have her in central office as opposed to the library in the high school. She's more of an asset to us as she runs all and has the vision of the technology, and it'd be much more convenient to have her at arm's reach as opposed to, making a phone call or sending an email or whatever. So there'd be more more time for collaboration. Ideas happen when you can just bump into somebody, and all of a sudden you have this synergy that happens by having them at close proximity to you, and it's advantageous to bring her
That makes
back.
sense. But then that begs the question, if you're using space that's available in the high school now, would it make more sense to extend the new addition on the high school into where the greenhouse is now, instead of building a totally new building that's located somewhere remotely?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that. I remember just an aside conversation I had years ago when I first got here with Jim, and he said they looked at it for a brief second and then just kind of dismissed the idea. So that's something that really hasn't been studied, so I can't really kind of comment on the benefit or the plus and minuses of it.
When
To
that
be
addition,
honest.
when that addition was built, there was discussion at the time that it was expandable into that space.
That's what he told me, yeah.
And I would hope that somebody, before you go and dig a new hole, would look at the possibilities of doing that with the the potential for cost savings there. But that's something that I would like to see you look at.
Okay.
On another note, I want to talk to you about the field upgrade. I know there's a lot of debate going on in athletics with regards to artificial turf. And not only cost, but safety. And what have you talked on that issue?
Well, back in the day of artificial turf, used to be basically a cement pad with some indoor-outdoor carpet on there, and it would create tons of knee injuries. So they had to come up with a solution to make it softer and more like regular sod and whatnot. So they came up with the process of having the recycled rubber put inside the grass material. Now, we've talked about the negatives of that, quite honestly. The maintenance costs associated with it, the raking of it. There are some health concerns with what the material is made out of recently that have been in the news and whatnot that we've discussed, and it's something that we are definitely aware of, plus the life of the whole project. It's not something you put in there and 30 years down. You don't get a 35-year warranty on an artificial surface. I mean, it gets switched out every 15 years probably at a very high cost. But there have been discussions, and people are aware of the emerging health concerns, particularly in the sport of soccer or field hockey or something like that. Even football, when football players at the end of the game, there used to be this establishment I went to years ago that used to serve peanuts in a bucket, and you would have them shelled, and you'd sit there for 4 or 5 hours with your buddies discussing life's events, and by the time you got home and you undressed, you'd have peanut shells just falling from your clothing. I believe the football players experience the same thing. When they take their uniforms off, they have these little rubber pellets that get in the clothing and then therefore come off. So it's something that we're aware of, and we're not dismissing lightly.
If you were going to rebuild a field with turf as opposed to artificial, what are you talking for a cost?
Oh, to do a regular new sod field? I don't think we've looked at that particularly. Our field, when it's, you saw a picture of it, and that was in early spring, but when it's in its peak season, is a pretty good field. Mm-hmm. It's lush, it's green, it's thick, it's very nice. The grounds crew take great pride, and they go to school for this. They're certified turf managers, so we can get that thing without the daily pounding to look as pristine as any field that one would see that was an artificial surface. It's just the use that it takes its toll. And I don't think any particular strain of grass that we can find or sod or anything is going to take care of that issue. So,
Desiree, you had another question?
Yeah, just on the topic of the fields, the track and field. I'm an architect, and I've done, back in California, I did a field upgrade for a high school out there. Similar configuration with the double radius around so you have the shorter end zones.
mm-hmm.
So it goes around the wider field. They integrated in the drains for the track at the same time that they did a turf field, but they did it at the same time because the drains had to be coordinated at the same time, and you've got them broken off separately where you're going to do the track first and then the turf or the field upgrades. So that would be my suggestion, is something to consider, to see if you're kind of stepping on your own toes by doing one versus the other at one time instead of doing them both at the same time.
It would be, obviously, it'd be preferable to do the project as one big project and not separate it out. Because once you do the track and then you want to put an artificial surface in the field, you're going to have to plan in advance for where those drains are going to go. There is drainage in that field already, but it really hasn't been mapped out. So there's going to have to be some intrusion underneath the current track to get the proper drainage inside the track, and there's going to have to be, basically what we were told is a bridge built over the track as opposed to sheets of plywood and whatnot to be put over it so there wouldn't be any damage. So that's an additional cost too.
And then one other thing to the extent of that is when you're considering the turf, also in reverse, if you have the sod, like this artificial turf versus real turf being like the management methods, like in terms of watering and I don't know if you guys use pesticides, but any of the stuff to help maintain it as green as it can be, and so there's that kind of a cost to it as well. I mean, if you're looking at the health concerns of like fake artificial turf.
Everything with all our fields, everything we use is organic. There are no artificial anything in our fields, and sometimes I remember getting a few complaints that we fertilized the field too soon before a field hockey game, and it was rather warm, and you could smell the natural fertilizer that was on the field, and it wasn't really kind of pleasant for the kids nor the spectators in the stands. So I've got several calls on that one. So we definitely look at the schedule, and when we do our fertilizing, we make sure it's plenty time in advance of any event that's going to happen on a particular field to avoid, such things. But everything we use is organic. There's nothing, artificial in it, and nothing toxic. So.
No other comments or questions? Matt, the one that I remembered that didn't remember before when I was making a comment, when you went through your explanation of the technology infrastructure upgrade, you mentioned that you'd recently had a server failure that resulted in data loss, and I guess we've all sort of gotten used to hearing server failures and data losses over time, but as the network technology has matured, that seems to be a situation that ought to be manageable and preventable more and more today, or more and more into the future. Is your technology infrastructure upgrade program that you've got, because it's got expenses each year, incorporated something that would prevent that kind of obviously servers will always fail, but preventing the data loss as a result of it, or minimizing the data loss by virtue of systems that back it up to the cloud, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have with our major systems, our student information system, our accounting system, our other data gathering systems that we do have. We do a backup, and we virtualize everything now, and the company also does a backup. So if we had a complete failure of our student information system, we would be able to be up and running, because twice a day a backup is done, and it's done remotely, sitting in a server farm in some undisclosed location. so they would be able to get us back up. Same thing with the fund accounting software. We're in the process of doing the same thing with all these remote locations. They do come back to the high school server and are backed up there, but from that point they don't go to the cloud anywhere. And so we're looking at correcting that. So that's as we attack one, we make the adjustment and we make those contingency plans. This server was like a RAID 5, and usually if one drive fails, the next one's supposed to pick up, then the next one's supposed to pick up, and none of these picked up. So it was that kind of case.
So the best backup that you had for it was a couple of weeks from the high school?
Correct. Yeah, that's what we were able to recover.
Okay. And so, but in your technology plan going forward, is some of the budget, some of the money designed to help improve that situation?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. I mean, we've been through some data losses. We had some with our student information system that, boy, I'll tell you, almost brought me to my knees. And we were fortunate enough to be able to recover 99% of it. We had to still have some inputted, but that's when we made the switch over to doing our own backups and then having the company do a backup for us and come in and store it in a different location, the whole system, just a mirror image of it every single day, twice a day. So we're doing that with all these. Every time we set up a new server, we're making provisions for that to happen.
That's my only question. Any others? Thank you, Matt, for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was really beneficial information.
Thank you.
What's the will of the board in terms of how you want to deliberate on this? Do you want to deliberate on this now? Do you want to deliberate on both the CIPs at the end of the night? Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, it's my view that in view of the fact we have a large number of members of the public who have got other interests than rather hear us deliberate, I propose that we deal with both CIPs after we've dealt with all the other agenda items.
I'll go with that.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Now, all of your recommendations on all of the items were listed as necessary, except for the field upgrade, which doesn't have a rating at all. So take a look at that. So, that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Send that one that way, send that one this way.
Oh, okay. Send them to you. Over to you. Over to you, sir. I'll take one in passing. Tim's.
All set? Oh, that was fast. Didn't use my time. Thank you and welcome. And
You want a cookie?
yeah, you want a cookie? Tell us what's in your CIP. We'll get
Tell
you
us
some
what's
cookies.
in there. Oh, in our CIP. Okay. We have done our CIP in the same way that we've done it in the past, but it's different than you have seen with the school. We did it in a major projects form. You'll find throughout the 6 years of the projects that we're projecting, the main theme are bridges, bridges, bridges. We've had the opportunity to have tapped into state funds whereby 80% of bridges will be paid for, as well as a couple of bridges that were over the $3 million mark. We were able to tap into the federal funds and get on that list. So you'll see that theme throughout the plan. The other things that you'll see are 3 buildings. One being the South Fire Station, one being the highway garage, and the other one being a library of sorts at some time. So there's kind of like a placeholder for the library. So in the year 15-16, which is the year that we're coming up to, we have proposed the bridge replacement at Bean Road. It's a total project cost of $1.6 million, $320,000 of which is our 20%, and the state funding is almost $1.3 million. That has moved up in its, seems like the bridges are a moving target. We have moved bridges around several times, and in this case, this one was recently determined by the state or downgraded in terms of its safety and its level of tonnage to cross it. So it moved up in priority. McGaw Bridge is going to be done this year, or is in the process of being done right now. We also have the stormwater drainage improvements, and I'll go over these in a general sense, and then we'll get to the individual slides that tell you what drainage projects and a little bit more about the Bean Road and the other projects that we're doing. Paving infrastructure, combined with the two items, which are the amount of money that gets tacked on to the motor vehicle permit fees. We have a total of $800,000 in this year's operating budget for repaving of roads, and that's the same as last year. Again, in 14-15, we have the DW Highway, the remainder of the DW Highway being redone, and that is from the Chamberlain Bridge to Reedsbury Lumber. Okay. And that's it for 14, 15, 16. Okay. So here's the big overview. You see the South Fire Station, the $650,000 that was allotted to us from the mall is still sitting there waiting. We have it placed in 2017, 2018. The other building that we're talking about is the highway garage, and that is placed, the town council decided that they would not put it on this year's ballot, but would put it on next year's ballot, or would consider putting it on next year's ballot, and that is in the green there, kind of in the middle of the page, $3.3 million. And then the library is all the way over in 2021, all the way over to the right, in the green down at the bottom, and there's this, what they refer to as a placeholder of $6 million. And then there's also a placeholder for additional athletic fields. So what I'm assuming that means is that we're really not ready to talk about that in specifics, but we want to make sure that it's brought to everybody's attention that those are topics that will be brought up as time goes forward, and they're expensive ones. We've talked a little bit about funding sources. One of the things that I know that you don't concentrate too much on that, but I think it's really important for you to know that we continue to take very seriously keeping a certain allotment of money in the operating budget to place into capital reserve funds and such. It's a very easy place to cut, and because it doesn't appear to have too much of an effect in a certain year. If you have savings, you can still spend it, but if you don't put money in, you won't have savings for future years. So our goal has been to put approximately $1 million or $1.1 million into the capital reserve funds of various sources over each year, and this year we're proposing putting in $1.4 million. So, again, with the bridges, I think it's important to talk about the bridge projects, because these are the major things that are you're going to be seeing in the future. And we thought we'd give you a little history as well. So we start in 2008 just to see how much bang we've got for our buck as far as bridges are concerned. We have a very aggressive bridge project. We're very fortunate to have people that know people helping us to get our bridges up to the front. And not only that, but there are communities that don't have the 20% during these difficult times, and they have to, they get skipped over. They end up getting skipped over, and we're ready. So, in the past 11 years, we have done $16 million worth of bridges and paid $2.7 million out of town funds for it, and that is ones that have been done and ones that are proposed. So you can see McGaw Bridge Road Bridge is in this current year that we're in. Bean Road is scheduled for next year, the year that we're talking about, 15-16, next year's budget. Bedford Road near Pearson Road, that one and the US 3 bridge are the ones that are going to need to go into the federal program. And the reason for that is because the state of New Hampshire only allocates for their portion of bridge aid $6 million statewide, and they have clearly said to us, we're not going to send it all over to Merrimack each year. So because with some fancy footwork, they were able to get those two bridges into the federal program so that we could still get an 80-20 match for those.
The Route 3 bridge is the Chamberlain Bridge?
No.
Oh, over here. I gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so so the Bean Road Bridge replacement, that's scheduled for this year. It was constructed in 1981, and it's a multi-plate steel arch bridge. And recently, as I was saying, that the bridge over Babuzik Brook, with a little E at the end, somebody was, get a little French there, on there, was inspected by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation and downgraded to a posted weight limit of 10 tons due to corrosion on the water line. And that's one of the reasons why this bridge has been moved up. Stormwater drainage improvements, the ones that are anticipated, that $100,000 that we showed in 2015-2016 expenses, the anticipated projects, depending on funding and depending on the bids that come in, are Turkey Road near McQuestion, DW Highway / Natticook Brook, Birch Street and Valley View Drive, Amherst Road, Wilson Hill Road, Executive Park Drive, Thornton Road West, and townwide basin repairs. Paving and infrastructure improvements. This is the $800,000 to come out of operating funds that we have proposed for this year. So in addition, DW Highway is on its own. It's a separate capital improvement, capital reserve fund. So we talk about that separately. This particular year, again, depending on funding and depending on bid pricing, it is anticipated that Babuzik Lake Road between DW Highway to O'Gara Drive will be done. Wire Road between DW Highway and Bedford Road, Danforth, Cummings, Hassel, Hutchinson, and Cowan will be done. Cowan will be done. And we wanted to show you that we've showed you several years, the past 4 or 5 years, all the roads that have been done, and I think it is starting to show. It's hard to catch up once you've kind of slipped back, but keeping it at a level that is not removing money to save something else, it really needs to have a place in the budget, because road repairs don't go away, they just keep getting worse and worse. Paving DW Highway, that was the other one that I was talking about. It has its separate capital reserve fund. The town, as you know, rehabilitated between Greeley Street and the Chamberlain Bridge over the Sauhegan River. And the remaining stretch, which goes from the Chamberlain Bridge to Reed's Ferry Lumber, is planned to be done in fiscal year 15-16. We've been saving for that for several years and have the funds to do so. This is another bridge replacement project. This is the Bedford Road one. This was one that was going to, it kept coming to the front. We were going to do it this year, we were going to do it the next year, we're going to do it the next year, but what happens is that many of these bridge projects were estimated in terms of costs several years ago, and when the actual engineering came through, we did the engineering projects, they came in at hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars more than anticipated. So we had to kind of move things around to where the state would be willing to pay for it, or they had enough money in their coffers. So they weren't done necessarily in order of importance, but more in order of practicality. Highway garage, again, sorely needed. I wish I knew what to do to convince people how sorely needed a highway garage is. I'm not sure how. I think it's somewhat like the SAU project. There were so few voters that came out. Maybe, I think, Lynn, maybe 1,900 voters came out to vote on this, and we got over half, but we didn't get 2/3. If anybody ever wants to go over and visit the highway garage, the poor, sad highway garage, you really should go and see what these people make do with. They've cobbled together this thing for years and years and years and years. And they've made such a valiant effort toward keeping it standing. So, Chamberlain Bridge rehabilitation, sidewalk repairs. Those are scheduled for 16-17. This, as you probably have seen, the big, huge steel plates that have had to go into the walking surface because one day someone was walking along or jogging or walking along the thing and saw a hole down to the river. So, so anyway, needless to say, the sidewalks need to be repaired, and some of the brickwork. Same thing, US 3 over DW Highway. This is scheduled to coincide with work being done on the Wire Road intersection. So we've pushed this one out. We've pushed the Wire Road project out to coincide with this one. Because they are in close proximity, and I think that we could get some 80% money out of this. So that those will be done on the same year, and I believe that's 18-19. Turkey Hill Road intersection improvements. Again, that was another one that was identified as one that that needed some work. It's a difficult intersection, to say the least, and there have been some accidents there. So there have been several designs that have been discussed, one of which is a rotary. which you will like, Alistair. Griffith Street boat ramp, that's pushed way to the end. The town council has set aside money in their own accounts to help to pay for it, but for that one, as well as the Severns Bridge canoe launch, we're waiting for the state to come forward with their share. They do have a source of money that they use to fund boat launches, and they, as it stands, according to them, they're out of money at this point. So we pushed that off for a while. And infrastructure and improvements on gravel roads. I don't know that I'm convinced that that's something that needs to be done. This has been proposed by Public Works, and it's a very costly endeavor. So that has been pushed to the end of the list. The other one is that has been proposed by the Public Works Department that I'm not overly keen on is the Executive Park Drive paving. It serves such a small, obviously it needs work, but as far as bang for your buck, is it really something that uses a lot of people use? It has to be one of the criteria that you look at. And if development occurs over there, it might be the time for us to look to the developer to help with paying for that. Sawdust Storage Building, this is a wastewater treatment plant proposal to replace an old pole barn building that's 29 years old, $160,000. And Phase 3 wastewater treatment facility improvements. This will be the final phase of the wastewater treatment facility improvements. We have done very well with them. I think it has been faithfully followed. A rate study has been faithfully followed that included analysis of what needs to be done to the wastewater treatment facility over time, and all of those things have followed through. Phase 1 was done. Phase 2, the composting facility, have been done or are underway, and this is the final one. And again, it's all part of a rate study that was done, and we've been keeping up with the rates in order to pay for these bonds, and while at the same time other bonds are coming off the books and being paid for, these other ones can kind of slide in. And these are pump station improvements to Thornton's Ferry, again, the wastewater treatment plant project, pump station, and another pump station for the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate the added detail and information that comes from the PowerPoint presentation rather than sort of those old form sheets that we used to still do get, but with that PowerPoint. I have a couple of questions about the couple of buildings that you talked about. For as long as I've been sitting in the middle of the room here, we've been talking about South Fire Station, and I know that the message has always been we need to sort of look at our overall fire station situation across the whole town, and as a part of that, at some point there'll be a proposal to do something, whether it's south or central or something new and different. And this is the first time that there seems to be something more than a placeholder in this. Has that study been done? Is there some information that you can share about that?
Well, during the town council's retreat, we discussed the concept of spending a sum of money to hire a consultant to come in and look at what a new fire department would look, a fire department of the future would look like, specific to Merrimack, because we obviously have a lot of things that are different than other towns. There's large lots, there's no tenements, there's no buildings on top of each other, there's not a lot of absentee landlords, there's not a lot of apartments. There are, wide open spaces and all those kinds of things, and a lot of our calls relate much more to ambulance calls than they do to fire calls. So because of that, we have been, the fire chief has been collecting very detailed data on all the types of calls, including what kind of calls they are, what type of service they require, what kind of equipment needs to be deployed to go there, ambulance and fire truck and that kind of thing. Where are they? What time of the day are they? And we're getting together actually this Friday to sit down and start going through that data and putting it into some kind of a form where we might be able to see some factual type of information that we can project into the future as to where we're going. So as I said, we've been given money to do it, but my concern has been in looking to go to someone from the outside, is that they might be coming from somewhere else that doesn't have our same situation, that may be a bigger city, that may have a different kind of population, an elderly population versus a younger population, and more poverty or more, more all kinds of different things that are I don't want a cookie cutter fix. I want something that projects what Merrimack has and what Merrimack experiences and how to best serve those needs.
Okay, so for now, this is really still.
Yeah, that was the long. That was
Still
the long
looking for a
version.
placeholder.
That was the long answer.
No,
it's a great answer.
It's well done. It's the information that I asked for and needed. So that study and that plan for sort of the fire department of the future, as you mentioned, it is still in progress, and
Yes.
This result in 2017-18 may come to an expenditure, but what form it'll take, who knows at this point.
Right.
Half tongue-in-cheek with the concept of the highway garage and getting support there, if you figure out how to get Lynn to make that a polling place, so people have to show up there to go vote.
Right.
Well, could I
They'll
take
all
that one
see
stage, Mr. Chairman? If instead of inviting people to go and visit it, like you did last year, and I did, and I realised how many badge you needed, had you thought about doing a TV program from there and showing everybody just, like this old house type TV program?
We
if you
did.
put that on public
did.
television,
Did that.
Yeah.
did they? I never saw that.
Did.
Yeah.
Missed it.
Yeah.
I saw it.
It was
Keep
on
running it.
many, many.
Keep running it
many-
then.
many-
You
it was
desperately
on
need
many,
it.
many
You
times.
desperately need it.
No, I agree. The department does a fantastic job. I was working with the folks that you have over there when we did the Rotary Club did the turkey trot on Thanksgiving right after the snow, and they got the roads cleared and dry and able to run on. They were fantastic. They were good sports about everything, right there and able to help. And then I stopped by after the race and donated some canned goods to their side of the competition between them and the fire department, and got to see the inside. Plus I was returning all the cones and things that we borrowed. And boy, do they need a new garage. No question.
Very grim.
Why have you postponed it? Why have you not put it on the ballot this year? I notice it's not on until 16.
I was not here for that discussion. I was out for a while. But I understand it centered around not having anything different to say. So if we, the idea of presenting the same thing, exact same thing in the same way and expecting different results. So we didn't really have time to think about what is that, what are those elements that will push it over the edge to make it into a viable project. And that's why they
I watched some of the discussion at the town council, and that's exactly what they're thinking.
Plus, surely also in 16, because it's a presidential election year, you get a higher turnout. Lynn, am I right?
Doesn't matter because
doesn't-
that's town
it's
election.
different.
in
Oh,
April.
it's town. It's not
Yeah,
the
it's
same
early
time,
in
is
the
it? You
season.
should
Yeah,
have
it's
it.
not
Yeah,
November.
yeah.
We've thought of that, believe me.
Hey,
Well, that's when you
open.
should have it.
Put it as a special on the.
Special on the side for.
We asked, but
Well,
no,
first you
no
gotta
can
have-
do.
You got to have the political brains tell you whether that's going to help or hurt, because
Yeah.
you don't know what the different population's going to look like when it comes out. Nelson, did you have another question?
That was it for now. Thank you.
Desiree, did I see your hand go up?
No, I don't think so, or I forgot, but thank you.
Two things.
Alistair.
The picture you showed of the Bean Road of the corrugated, I call it the corrugated iron falling apart. Are we going? We're not going to use that design again, are we? Can we not use concrete? Like if I think of the bridge that Hollis put across South Merrimack Road, which when their corrugated iron thing fell apart, they put a nice pre-stressed concrete thing in. Are we going to do the same
That's why I
thing?
have my friends here from DPW who happen to be sitting out here waiting patiently, and
Oh,
now,
how
now
nice
they
of,
have a
how
purpose
nice
for
of them
waiting.
to turn up and tell me what you're going to do.
Kyle Fox?
Just talk, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
It is
It'll be
not on.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
You're correct, Alistair. It will not be the corrugated metal pipe anymore.
Hallelujah. Okay, thank you.
What will it be? What will it be?
The design obviously hasn't been completed yet, but given the span, I imagine it'll be similar to the Wire Road Bridge, which was steel H-piles for the foundation with concrete abutments on top and precast concrete beams.
Wonderful.
So I expect it'll be a design similar to that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
The other half of my question was, I saw you saying about reducing executive drive to 12 foot. How did the fire chief agree to that one? Because I seem to think the fire chief likes 22 foot and turnarounds and everything else.
Per lane.
Oh, it's 12 foot a lane, is it? You just said 12 foot. And
Oh, sorry.
12-foot wide travel lanes. So
oh,
you'd be
it's
24
going to be
feet
2
of
by
travel
12. Okay, I'll shut up.
Nelson.
I just had one further comment, Kyle. The bridge that you built on Bedford Road over Babusick Brook has received a lot of plaudits in the state level, at the state level, for the fact that it does not, the abutments to the bridge are not in the waterway, and there's room to expand the brook at high water levels without reaching the abutments. And that is considered a good thing from the point of view of the animal crossings and that sort of thing. So Merrimack was getting some praise at one of the meetings they attended for that reason. I just point that out.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kyle, before you go, I did just take an opportunity, since you're standing here, to give you a compliment. I watched the presentation to the school board last night about Madeline Bennett and Old Blood Road, and I thought you did a fantastic job. And it's great to have folks in town that really get engaged and do a good job with those things. So, what's
Thank
that?
you.
And know what they're talking about. So I just
But
wanted to
some
share
of
that.
us don't agree with what you said.
Well, as far as the ultimate engineering solution, it doesn't change the fact that he did a
But
great
not
job with his
everybody drives a
presentation.
bus.
Yes. Are there other questions for Kyle or the town manager and assistant town manager, deputy town manager, assistant?
Financial director, come everything else.
No other questions?
No, thank you.
Questions for that?
You get off easy. Thank you guys for the presentation, and thank you for coming visit. We should visit more often.
You can always come on Thursday night. We're there. Yeah, we're there.
Boy,
You probably wouldn't want us to, but that's another matter.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And if you need some cookies, come get some. Item number 4 on our agenda is Tomasian Drive LLC as the applicant and the Stephanie Tomasian Revocable Trust as the owner, and its review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a 19-lot cluster subdivision located at Tomasian Drive in the R1 Residential, Aquifer Conservation and Flood Hazard Conservation Districts and Shoreland Protection Area. Tax map 4B, lot 9-1. This item is continued from our September 23rd, 2014 and November 18th, 2014 Planning Board meeting. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Just to catch you up to speed a little bit, this project has actually already been accepted by the board. The board did vote to accept the application back in September. In addition to the memo that you received from Donna, we do have an additional waiver request that came in from Meridian this afternoon. You should each have a copy of that at your places regarding the approach grades to the intersection from 4.12D of the regulations. And though he has left the room, I can report that Public Works and Kyle Fox is supportive of the waiver request.
Thank you, Tim. Please introduce yourself again to us, although we're becoming familiar faces, and then tell us where we're at with the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Ken Clinton with Meridian Land Services.
Ken, I don't know if your microphone's on.
Sorry about that. Ken Clinton with Meridian Land Services, and sitting beside me is Errol Dewey-Meisler from Tomasian Drive, LLC. And as Donna had a very good and thorough staff memo as far as the history of the project, I'll be brief, catch you up to speed in case you didn't see that entirely. We were last here before the board on September 23rd to have this application accepted and start moving through the process. Once again, this is a 19-lot cluster subdivision off of Tomasian Drive with about 25 acres of open space. We've had several meetings in advance of our final application where we worked through some of the design aspects, the general configuration of the lots, the open space, and whatnot. Since the 23rd, we've been fairly busy. We've made numerous plan revisions per the planning board input on that meeting, as well as addressed the majority, if not almost all, of the town and staff comments. Having done so, we then submitted to DES for our wetlands permit, and then had that same plan go to CLD for peer review. Once we got the peer review back, there was several pages of additional comments, etc., as there typically is. We've gone through, addressed those comments, provided responses to town staff, and recently we had a meeting with both Kyle Fox and Donna Poli to go over our responses to the CLD revisions. We have copies of that plan set, but it certainly wasn't fair to try to submit that exact plan set to the planning board for review, since you really wouldn't have much time to catch up to it. Suffice to say that I think Donna Poli in particular, and certainly Kyle, feel comfortable with what we've done on the plans as far as the various, some technical nature, some minor plan drafting revisions, etc., that we've done. Key items, though, to really concentrate on, in particular, is the waiver that we received back in September. That waiver was for a reduction from what's typical, a 3-to-1 side slope at our wetland crossing. You might recall the conversation where, although I shared with the board that Kyle Fox was not in favor of it, I apparently had a fairly convincing argument, and the board was willing to grant us a waiver for 2-to-1 side slopes. And that was primarily, if not exclusively, so we can reduce our wetland crossing impact. I appreciate the board's granting of that waiver. In subsequent discussions with Kyle, we discussed why he prefers not to have less than 3-to-1 side slopes on those. I understand, and we worked it out that we would back away from that particular design. So we have complied with the requirements of 3-to-1 side slopes in that section. As an alternative to that, I further discussed with Kyle, and as Tim just alluded to, we have a waiver request that I can provide the board, and we request a waiver to section 4.12D of the subdivision regulations to allow the intersection approach grade to be at a negative 2.37% grade, where the regulations allow for a maximum of negative 2%. This is a fairly negligible amount. As you leave Tomasian Drive and you enter in and you are going on a downslope into the subdivision, the regulation is negative 2%. We are at a slightly steeper grade coming off of Tomasian Drive. And what that allows us to do is, as we approach our wetland crossing, the road itself will be at a lower elevation. Therefore, we'll have a shorter height separation from the ground in the wetland crossing to the top of the pavement, which will just about reduce to the same amount the wetland impact. So Kyle was good enough to endorse that, and I did print out a copy of the email where I'll read from it. It says, "Good afternoon, Ken. The Public Works Department is in full support of this waiver request. The slight grade increase is an appropriate trade-off for the reduced wetland impacts." And Tim, you didn't happen to get any copies to anybody? So I'm happy that Kyle sees that as a good trade-off, and that's really keeps with the intent of what we tried to accomplish before. but yet provides a better situation for Kyle and his future road maintenance. So that is probably the key item I have to share this evening. Other than that, I just want to touch on the open space briefly. We, in the past, have suggested we could offer that to the town. The open space, once again, has to be greater than 50% in the cluster subdivision. We have, albeit 50.2%, it's 25 acres. We had suggested that we could consider granting that, conveying it, gifting it to the town, if that's what the town would wish to do. If not, perhaps we could retain it but have a conservation easement over it. Our offerings so far have not been met with a substantial response that definitively this is what we would like from you. Conservation Commission seemed interested but not necessarily willing to commit. Our offer still stands, and if the board so wishes and we receive a conditional approval tonight, while I would not like to make that a condition, I will sit here before you and testify that in goodwill we will honor that agreement and offer that once more to either town council and or through the Conservation Commission to see if they're happy to receive it in either fashion. I will touch on a few of Donna's comments. In her memo, while I certainly agree with the vast majority of comments, I do have a couple of clarifications that I'd like to make. On her item number 4, which has a request that the applicant address the comments from the fire department. Unfortunately, I believe that these particular 4 items, A, B, C, and D, are probably a cut and paste error from the 3-lot subdivision that occurred previous to this application across the street and don't really pertain to this particular application. Having said that, we did receive a letter from John Manueli dated December 12th, and I'm not sure, Tim, if your office has received a copy of that.
We have not seen that yet.
I'll forward that to Tim, and basically Captain Manueli talks about the suitability of the name for the road, Windy Hollow Circle, verifies that he's satisfied with our hydrant locations, identifies street numbers for the various lots, so on and so forth. Suffice to say, regardless of the comments, that we will comply with and satisfactorily address any of the fire department comments.
What I would suggest to the board in that circumstance is to basically remove items A through D and just leave the condition to address comments from fire department.
Yeah.
As far as the specifics.
Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My next minor comment has to do with item number 6 regarding the Merrimack Conservation Commission. Fortunately, that item says applicant to address comments from Merrimack Conservation Commission as applicable. Item A, it mentions a DOT permit, which is unnecessary. That may have meant DES.
I think that's DES.
Maybe alteration of terrain.
Yep.
Something to that effect. I don't know.
I think it was AOT.
But once again, the lead-in was as applicable, but I don't mean to nitpick, but it is something that I wanted to comment on. Secondly, item B, the comment is that the deeds of the 19 properties include guidance regarding non-use of salt, de-icing compounds, and low phosphates, low release nitrogen fertilizer, etc. Several times as I've had discussions with the Conservation Commission on developments, they've mentioned that it's their preference to pursue some type of notification, de-language, brochures, pamphlets, what have you. And as I've brought this comment to the planning board on occasion, it while well-intentioned and everybody understands it's a good thing, it becomes a bit of a compliance or enforcement issue generally. And in this particular comment, where it's noted to be in the deeds as a land surveyor by my professional license, I look at this and say, well, that's really not appropriate at all to have guidance about fertilizers or no salt in an actual deed. And in fact, I believe the board's made a comment that they didn't think it was appropriate in a previous subdivision.
That's why we have as applicable there.
So I just wanted to make sure that once again we're on the same page, that somebody on the board might think it's rather applicable and I might say or suggest that it should not be. Item number 8, regarding the applicant to address any forthcoming comments, in parentheses, including after CLD's second review. I'll submit to the board that I believe that's completely unnecessary, given the type of comments. I would like, hopefully, the have that be the discretion of community development staff, and not an absolute.
As to whether there is a second review?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Other than that, I have no other comments or concerns about any of the conditional items that are suggested by town staff. And in the interest of time, and obviously you've seen us with this application a fair amount, I'll yield to the board and answer any questions that the board or the public has.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the work that you've done on this. And also thank you for the extra work to coordinate with Kyle Fox and his department to work out the difference of opinion and how that design went. I think that you come up with a very good, happy solution between the two.
Yeah, it worked out.
Other comments or questions? Desiree.
Can you zoom us in onto the wetland crossing while you get it up on screen?
Absolutely. So at station 5+0, just right here, you'll see our culvert. And where we would have had more contour lines, proposed contour lines showing a steeper slope, quite simply, the road was lowered, so to speak, in elevation. And once again, with lower height to account for, the footprint of the wetlands impact was reduced in a typical or similar fashion as if we actually had the steeper side slopes, which would have narrowed it by nature.
So previously, I believe you had a guardrail on one side.
We did.
And a retaining wall, or there was a conversation that might be needed?
That was an option. In fact, Kyle had thrown out, I believe, perhaps, if we needed to reduce the side slope, maybe one of the head walls, the inlet head wall in particular, could have been used as a retaining wall, and that would have brought in our grading. However, the reduction of the height of the road itself negated the need for the guardrail, so it's actually a really good solution in the end.
Good. Very good. That's my question.
Nelson.
On the same view graph while we're here, is the sidewalk still there?
Yes, it is.
I just
Yep.
couldn't sort it out.
This is the sidewalk
quite.
right
Okay. Good.
Yep.
Good. I had a couple of other questions, if I may, Mr.
Please,
Chairman. With regard to the open space and the disposition of it, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel it should become part of the Conservation Commission's property, in the sense that it abuts and attaches to the Fields property. And because of that proximity, it just makes sense that it should be managed as one parcel from the conservation point of view.
Yep, we've had that discussion. In fact, I shared with you the Ireland's deed and the particular deed language, that it would make sense that it just follows the same types of restrictions and the same format of that easement. I think that would be very smart.
Tim, on that subject, I share Nelson's view. I'd rather see the Conservation Commission take it, but what's the planning board's role? Are we just have no role in that decision? Do we write letters to them saying we suggest it, or is it something that we can actually have some?
I don't know that you have the authority to force them one way or the other, but I certainly believe that a letter to the commission urging them to go that direction would be wholly appropriate.
Okay. So let's consider that as a part of our ultimate decision.
Is it up to the Conservation Commission to go that direction?
Ultimately, it's the town council's final decision. They make a recommendation to the council on any disposition of either easement or in-fee purchase of the property.
From the Conservation Commission or from the Planning Board?
From the Conservation Commission to the council.
Okay. And in this case, although you said purchase, it's really acceptance more than anything else.
Yeah.
Nelson, did you have further comments?
The only other thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is that I'd be willing to make a motion to grant this waiver request when and if the board is ready, and if everybody on the board is satisfied for that.
I'm certainly satisfied. I don't know if the boards would like to hold a public hearing and open it up for the public comment before we consider waivers, or
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
let's do that.
Yeah. Okay, I can wait.
Are there other questions or comments in general about the application before we take up?
I've got a very minor one, Mr. Chairman, but I can take it after we've had the public opinion.
Okay. Let's open it up for the public, abutters, or citizens that wish to weigh in. And Pete, I see that you're getting ready. If you want to take that microphone and use it while you're sitting down, please feel free to.
It's live, Pete.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm going to be very brief.
Well, don't forget to introduce yourself to your old friends.
Oh, my name is Arthur Gagnon, 130 Bedford Road here in Merrimack. Okay. I'm going to be very brief. Having gone through this entire thing with and the way it evolved, it's a tough site to work with, but in my opinion is that it reasonably and is substantially conforming with the spirit and the intent of the zoning ordinance for that R1 zone. And I just don't want to elaborate on it anymore on that. I think it's everybody pulled together in the end to make this thing work. I especially would like to thank our staff, the planning board, and also the developer and his soil scientist for the detailed work they did to overcome some of the hurdles on there and bring that near, almost near in conformance with the ordinance. With that, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Pete. I also want to thank you for the work that you've done, and I also noticed that you were, Ken, here when we were learning from the USDA about soil science last. I didn't know if it had a view towards this application or not, but the information we learned and the information that you've done has all been very beneficial towards considering this application. Are there other citizens or abutters who wish to weigh in on this application before the board makes some decisions on waivers or potentially final disposition? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And so, Nelson, your motion on the waiver is in order now, if you would like to make it.
Okay, I will make it, Mr. Chairman. I will move that we grant the waiver requested for the slope at the intersection of Tomasian Drive and this what's the new name of it? Windy Valley?
Windy Hollow Circle.
Windy Hollow Circle.
Okay, because the specific circumstances relative to this subdivision, namely the wetland crossing, or and the conditions of the land indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Is there a second for Nelson's motion?
I second.
Second by Desiree Fault. Any discussion? All in favor of granting the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 to grant the waiver. Is there further discussion on the main application or potential motion?
Mr. Chairman, could I just raise one of my hoary chestnuts?
Why not?
4B9-1-1-2-3, we granted reluctantly, the board granted reluctantly, if I may say so, overhead facilities. Can I assume you're going to bury them now, please?
I think that they've said that in previous meetings.
Well, I want it on the record. I would have said after, considering what happened on the night before Thanksgiving, we would never want another overhead pylon anywhere in this town, but that's... Ken?
I think I responded last time that
You
it
did,
wasn't
but I would
appropriate
like
for
to
me to
hear it.
comment on a different application. Having said that, obviously all of the new lots within the subdivision will all be underground. The connections along Tomasian Drive are intended to be underground as well. I don't see that there's a problem stating that there will be.
Thank you so much. On the basis of that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like a motion that we grant final approval for this project, subject to the various changes we made on Donna's memo of December the 12th, 2014.
Is there a second for that motion? Second by Lynn Christensen. Tim, do you have enough clarity on the changes to the...
The one item I did want to get the board's comment on is item 6B, as to whether or not you wish to see that as part of the conditions, or if you would rather not, which is the issue of the deed language.
Sure. If there was to be deed language, the word for it is a restriction, not guidance. Guidance in a deed, I agree with our surveyor friend that that's not appropriate. But if there was a restriction on the property of use, that would be an appropriate language for a deed. That said, I don't think that putting it in a deed is effective at controlling salt or fertilizer use. And so I don't think that it needs to be a requirement in here. I hope that the applicant will do its best to convey the message, but I think that's the best we can do. Desiree.
I'm forgetting the name of the subdivision that we did, but I'm pretty sure they brought it before us. 13 units, kind of over by Reed's Ferry, I think. Another cluster subdivision that we had done, and that one they had put signage, I think, outboard on the grass.
I think, Desiree, you're talking
That
about
was your subdivision, I think, wasn't it, on Pierce
No,
Road?
I think, aren't you talking? Are you talking about his, or are you talking about the one down by the 50/50 plus home thing down?
Melton Associates.
Melton Associates, yes, that's right.
That's a site plan, not a subdivision, so there's different ability for us
That's
to
right.
enforce.
That's correct. Thank you, Tim. Yes.
In a subdivision, excuse me, in a subdivision, because we're not regulating specific locations of buildings or driveways, we don't have the same flexibility and enforcement authority that we would if this were a site plan, where we'd be talking about where things are specifically placed within the lot.
So, just for clarification then, so that 13-unit cluster was a site plan?
That was a elderly housing that had a mix of townhouse units and garden-style apartments for 55.
No, I'm not talking about that.
The 13-unit
the
subdivision did not have signs for sand and salt. It was the 55 and older one. The 13-unit had signs that said you could go through here to get to the common area and some areas that kind of cut through the woods between lots. And I think that was by agreement of the property owner.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was to identify the transition, the easements from the roads to a few lots that didn't have direct connectivity so that they can get to the open space. And that was one of our subdivisions, yes.
Yep. Now, obviously, when we drive around any public road, occasionally you do see no salt route posted in places. Is that something that, because there's public roads in this, is that an appropriate way? Does the planning board have anything to do with that?
I think typically that's done by virtue of whether or not it's located in the wellhead protection area.
Yes.
And I do not believe
This is not.
This is not.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
Tim is correct, and the highway department puts out those signs.
And decides where they
Yeah.
go and when to
Yeah.
put them out? Okay. So, with that in mind, I think asking the applicant to do his best to convey it to his homeowners is about as far as communicating that can go. You could put it in a deed, but it's basically a waste of paper to do that.
Do the makers of the motion and the seconder agree to remove that portion of the condition?
Nelson, you made the motion?
No, I did.
No,
Oh, Alistair made the
I'm
motion.
quite happy to have it removed.
And Lynn is happy to have it removed. Are there any other conditions which require clarification?
Not to my mind, no.
Wouldn't sign them?
No,
The
that's
DOT
still-
should read AOT for
That's,
6A.
you're talking 6A. 6A should be AOT, not DOT.
Okay.
But it's not really,
That's more of a typo than
Yeah.
a change in the conditions.
I'll make sure that it's clarified appropriately in the decision notice.
Okay, with that, is there any further discussion on the motion? Motion is to grant final approval subject to the conditions as modified here tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 for final approval. Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. For
Thank
coming
you
in.
very much indeed.
Item number 5 on our agenda is Public Service of New Hampshire Eagle Substation Expansion. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a site plan to expand the Eagle subdivision. The parcel is located at 23 Star Drive in the I-1 Industrial Aquifer Conservation and Flood Hazard Districts, Tax Map 3D1, Lot 5. The item is reopened from the October 21 Planning Board meeting, and Tim will help us explain why we're all having deja vu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you recall, the planning board accepted, granted several waivers, and granted final approval back on October 21st for this substation expansion. Subsequent to that, it was discovered that one of the abutters was not properly notified of the public hearing, and as such, we now have to reopen and revote on the particular project to be in compliance with state notification requirements. The memo that you have in your packet from Jillian summarizes that, and our recommendation essentially tonight is that you go through the same process you did the last time, and seeing that the plans that are in front of you are not changed from what was presented to you in October, We feel that the waivers, the acceptance, the waivers, and the conditions that were previously decided upon would be wholly appropriate again tonight.
So, Tim, if it's the will of the board to do so, should the applicant make his presentation, or should we handle it as expressly as the board is willing to do?
It's your call.
Okay. I think with a busy agenda, and for those of us that are familiar with it, if the board is willing to get us to the point that we can allow the abutter to have his testimony and consider how that might affect our decision. So in order to do that, we can bypass introduction by the applicant and take up the question of whether to accept the application as complete or re-accept it as complete. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Lynn, second. Second by Nelson. Any discussion on completeness? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 to accept it as complete. Let's proceed to the point of having a public hearing. Are there any abutters or interested citizens who wish to weigh in on this application before the board considers taking final action? Any abutters? No abutters offering testimony. We'll close the public hearing. What's the will of the board with respect to final action on the application?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we effectively grant final approval. Do you have to?
You can make the motion for waivers and final approval.
I make the motion. I was going to. I make a motion. We grant all the waivers we previously granted, and also move for acceptance of the project.
Before I ask for a second, the justification for the waivers is the same as were expressed previously?
Absolutely, exactly the same.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Koenig. Any discussion? Nelson?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss a couple of issues here. First off, I'm not sure if in our original proposal we talked about the Lower Merrimack River LAC comments, which were subsequently received, and if they are included by our previous motion or not.
They were not. However, we have received those comments, and they are incorporated into the file, and staff will ensure that they are addressed properly as part of the AOT process.
Okay, is the applicant aware of those and willing to do that? And maybe you have the answer, because one of those was more of a question than an answer. It had to do with the elevations.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And actually, I did send information back to Jean Porter regarding that question and the answer, and we're fine with all of the information that was submitted from the Lower Merrimack Advisory Committee. In regards to the answer that I sent back to Jean, basically the elevations that were shown on the shoreland permit are correct. The elevation of the base gravel is the same. It matches what's currently there, and that is slightly below the 500-year flood elevation. However, the equipment, key equipment, is raised above that with foundations.
Okay, so, all right.
I think that answers the question in the discussion we were having that evening.
It had to do with the elevations. As you all recall, the elevation of the 500-year floodplain was above the elevation of the ground level at the substation, and that bothered me a little bit. And so, but I expected something like this, that really they're up on feet and they're aware of it.
Understood. Oh, don't forget to sign in as well on the clipboard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't introduce myself either. My name is Deborah Zardageyer with GZA.
Okay, yeah, definitely please sign in, because I don't think we'll spell that name.
Yes. I think she might have a card. But
Print, please. Design is kind of straight. Okay, any other discussion?
There was one other question, Mr. Chairman. It had to do with lighting. I don't remember where it came up, but there's no night lighting on this site. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dana Lynch. I'm with Height Engineering. We have a new lighting plan that's going to be included in the final plan package as requested by the board's comments and conditions of approval. And the lighting is typically off unless there is a maintenance event going on, and it requires some level of lighting for safe access within the site, and that's the essence of the lighting.
It's probably within the regulations of the town, too. Yeah.
We'll be reviewing in accordance with the regulations per the condition that is eventually going to be revoted on tonight.
Okay. And they were going to submit a plan that showed the boundaries of the gravel. That was a commitment that was in our previous approval as
Yeah,
well.
that was a comment from the last
Yes.
time that the plan would show that.
Okay, all that said, I'm ready to vote for the motion.
Okay, excellent. All right, does anyone else have comments or questions? All in favor of granting final approval a second time, subject to the conditions of discussion here tonight?
And
conditions last time,
the
and the waivers?
waivers.
And all of that signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? One abstaining, so it's 6-0-1 with Mike Redding abstaining. Thank you all for coming back.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time, and my apologies for the omission.
No need to apologize. Item 6 on the agenda is Eugene Ordway as the applicant and owner, and Lauren Ludvigsen and Scott and Melissa Ordway as the owners. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a lot line adjustment plan located at 28A and 28B Shore Drive in the R Residential and Flood Hazard Conservation Districts, tax map 6A2, lot 14, 15, and 16. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Just based off of the brief conversation I just had with Mike, no, this is not deja vu. It's not the same one you saw last month. This is another lot line adjustment out by the lake. Very similar circumstances. The one item that I will raise from Jillian's memo is that we are recommending a condition of approval that this go before and obtain the appropriate variances from the zoning board, because once these parcels are adjusted, they do lose their non-conforming status and will need variances for frontage and lot size.
Thank you, Tim. Is the applicant here? Please come forward. Have a seat, settle in, and sign in. And when you're ready, make sure your microphone's on, introduce yourself, and tell us what your proposal is.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Eugene Ordway, and I'm the owner of 28A Shore Drive here in Merrimack. And I'm the father-in-law.
I'm Melissa Ordway, and I'm the owner of 28B Shore Drive, along with my husband.
And you're the daughter-in-law.
Daughter-in-law.
Okay. So on the plan that we've been given, the one towards the north is yours, and
Yes.
the one to the south is yours? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Please tell us what you got proposed here and what we're doing.
All right. I did write up a narrative. Hopefully everybody has a copy of that. And also there's a map of what's being requested. I've lived in 28A Shore Drive since 1975. It's waterfront property on Babusick Lake. I have used access to the lake continuously over that period of time and have made improvements, including steps down to the water. The slope is very steep. It requires steps. It's not something you can just walk to. I was ready to make somewhat of a major improvement to it a couple of summers ago. But for some reason, it came to mind that possibly I better make sure that the steps that I was replacing were in fact on my property. There was a possibility, with just by eyeball guessing, that it would come very close to being on Melissa's property, Melissa and Scott's property. So we jointly hired a surveyor, a surveying company, and surveyors came out, and lo and behold, the steps that I had built, actually several times over almost 38 years, were in fact on Melissa's property. And so we stopped right there, and Melissa and I, Scott and Lori, talked could we make a lot line adjustment where the line dividing 28A from 28B could be moved slightly in a southerly direction, a matter of 20 feet, so that I could continue to use the steps to the lake that I had used for so many years. One thing that the survey pointed out when it was done was that Melissa and Scott had been parking actually on my property for 10, 12 years, or quite a number of years, so long as they've been living there. And so we made a deal that if she and Scott would allow us to move the lot line between 28A and 28B so that I could pick up the stairs, then I would move the lot line that would allow all the parking that they have been using over the years to become their property and not be a problem if the property was ever sold. And so that's what we're requesting, is that you allow us to affect the lot line adjustments as we've requested in our application.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think that we probably have sufficient information to consider whether the application is complete. What's the will of the board on that question?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we consider this application as complete and should move forward to consider it.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Desiree Fault. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 to accept the application for review. Mr. Ordway, I have a couple of questions about your plan, not terribly complicated ones. Next to the parking area that Melissa and her husband use, there's something that says existing shed.
Yes.
Is that your shed or their shed?
It's my shed. It's not on my 28A property. I also happen to own 28C, and the shed is on 28C property.
But it looks like it's got a rock wall behind it that kind of isolates it from the rest of 28C, and it kind of gets accessed off of that road or driveway.
It's a rock wall that is, it's not 18 inches tall. It's like this.
Okay.
It's somewhat of and it's just a place to collect rocks that show up in the property.
Okay. So you get to that shed from the interior of your property. You don't get to it by the roadway around by Melissa's?
The door to the shed is located on the access road, so you would have to walk out on the access road to get into the shed.
Okay, that's perfect. That answers my question. Now, both the old property line and the new property line appear to have a approximate location of the leach field drawn straddling the property line, more so today than it would be under the new proposal. Is that a shared leach field for both houses?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there an appropriate easement or something drawn up so that the availability of both properties to use that leach field, if in the future one of the properties is sold and it isn't all within the same family?
No.
Okay. It may be something that the board wants to consider having as a requirement, which is not a very difficult thing to do, but the benefit of having an easement is more for Melissa's house than for yours, since it's mostly on your property. But it would guarantee that whoever would buy that house in the future always has the right to use and repair that leach field as the only site where you could put a leach field probably in the area.
The other question is that also used by the other, all three lots, or is it just the two? Just
No,
the
it's
two.
not.
Okay.
28C has its own separate leach field. May I ask a question?
Of course.
The drawing or the plan for the leach field, the joint leach field, was approved by the state. Does that make it?
Does that solve this problem for you?
Yes.
The approval by the state is from the Department of Environmental Services, and what they're looking is the soil sufficient to handle the load and all of that. The Department of Environmental Services wouldn't look at all about the property lines and the ownership and easements and that kind of thing. So it probably doesn't, but if you look into it and you find out that it does, and you could show Tim's department, if it's a condition that this board even wants to raise, you could certainly satisfy it by showing Tim some record that accomplishes that. It probably doesn't, though, because of what DES looks for.
It is something we have discussed. It should be legal in some ways, because she may not always be my tenant and vice versa.
Yeah. Now, does Melissa have your permission to go and use that dock and that stairway that you're rebuilding?
Yes.
Even though it's on your property, or it will be on your property?
He does.
Yeah. That may be also something that you consider dealing with in an easement as well, because if Melissa sells her home to the next buyer, that buyer probably wants to know whether they've got a legal right to use that dock, and maybe you want them to have it, maybe you don't. Who knows? But if you did want them to have it, and that's not something I think the board would take up today, but if you did want that next owner to have a legal right to go use that dock, you got to do that in an easement to make that happen.
Understand.
But that's not the same as the leach field, because it's not straddling the property line. When it straddles the property line, it's something that we pretty much have to try to push you to deal with. Those are the only questions that I have, other than this 50-foot parkway that goes between your buildings and the lakefront. How did that come to be, and who owns that parkway? I know that there's a court case described here. There's a long story, but tell me more about that.
Well,
as best you can.
This could be a long story. I mean, it's my property and quite a few other properties are a part of something called Pinola Estates, put together in 1927. And this is one of the original survey maps, and it shows a 50-foot parkway to be made available to all occupants of Pinola Estates, either front lot owners or back lot owners. Okay. But in 1974, there was a master's case. Judge Flynn, and a case between Charlie Morrill and Carl. And it was brought against a number of front lot owners by some back lot owners because front lot owners were putting impediments to travel, fences, boathouses, ladders, stairs, that sort of thing. Trying to make a long story
So the
short,
backlot owners were ultimately successful, I assume.
It was successful, and with a few minor exceptions, especially in the case of Melissa and myself, we both gained access, ownership of the front 50-foot parkway.
But it's got an easement that lets other people come across and use it.
No, it does not any longer.
Okay, so the backlot owners can't use the land in front of your place?
That's correct, they cannot.
Cannot.
Now,
okay.
There are a few minor exceptions to that because only the front lot owners who participated in the court case gained the right of ownership of the front 50-foot parkway. There were 3 owners who, for whatever reason, decided not to participate, and people could go down and park in front of their houses.
Okay. What you've shared with me is more than enough to tell me that it's got nothing to do with our decision here today, so thank you for that.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you for sharing
it's
that.
It's a long story.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for answering questions. Does any other member of the board have any questions for Mr. Ordway or Mrs. Ordway? Nelson?
Yes, I do, and you've taken care of a couple of those that were very clear to me. One of the things that's on here talked about new, I'm trying to find it now, talked about a new lot, yeah. This map that we were given shows 3 lots, and it calls them 6A2 14, 6A2 16, and 6A2 15. Different numbers than you've been using, at least that's the numbers on this plan. They talk about these as being new lots with this plan. And I wasn't sure if we were trying to subdivide these or this is an existing lot is what I think.
Are you talking about the notes on the note 6, the lot data?
No, on the plan itself where you see the call out of the tax map number, It says new lot above the tax number. and I
Meaning
think it
new
means
lot,
the
it's new
layout.
lot area. It's the only thing that's changed is the area based on the adjustment of those
yes,
lot lines.
But they are existing tax
They are
map,
existing
lots of
tax maps.
record.
Those are the
subdivided
existing
lots.
tax map and lot numbers.
Good
Okay,
point.
that answers my question. I didn't know if we were subdividing as well here, or reaffirming the subdivision of some kind. Okay.
And the 28 and 28A that the applicant's using as the number is their mailing address, I assume. Anything else?
Yeah,
Nelson?
no, that was all I had. I just didn't quite.
Okay. Any other questions by members of the board? Is there any abutter or interested citizen who wishes to weigh in on this lot line adjustment before the board considers taking final action? Seeing none, close the public hearing. What's the will of the board with respect to final action? There are no waivers, correct?
Oh, it depends on whether or not you feel comfortable with determining that section 4 6.1 regarding the monuments is not applicable.
Well, it's to set street intersection points of curvature. and
Boundary
tangents.
survey and appropriate monumentation.
Because this is a lot line adjustment, the regulations do allow the board to deem that those requirements are unnecessary without the need to secure a waiver. So if you're comfortable with the monuments not being there, then you can basically say that you do not need a waiver and it can be left as is.
So if we wanted to continue to have those monuments, they'd have to put monuments on this new lot line.
You would either have to install them or you basically waive the or you deem that it's unnecessary. Those are your two options right now.
Okay.
I would have thought for the future it would be surely better to put new monuments in on the lot line.
That's why we raise it.
I
The
would-
regulations do allow the board to.
No, I wouldn't
consider
waive it. I think they should be put in because it'll save a lot of arguments in the future when I won't be around.
Well, especially since there's going to be one set of deeds that have one description and another
Yeah,
set of deeds that have a
exactly.
second
Yeah.
description.
And I think it would, I also, Mr. Chairman, would like to take up your thoughts about putting in some form of words at some point in time, arranging that the use and whatever it is of the leach field should be documented. But I have this nasty feeling when houses get sold, things get screwed up. So that's the only reason I'm saying it.
Okay. I agree that it probably ought to be a condition that they get an easement, they resolve the easement for
Yeah,
the
I think it'd be a
use
good
of the
idea.
septic field.
Therefore, I would make a motion, therefore, Mr. Chairman, we grant acceptance subject to the
Approval.
approval, sorry, subject to the grant approval, subject to the memo produced for us by Julian Harris, but requiring the monuments for the new lot line to be put in and an easement to be created to covering the use of the leach field between items 6A216 and 6A214.
Is there a second for that motion? Nelson, I see
I'll
your
second
hand. As a second, any discussion? Mike?
So were you looking to set that as a requirement for the easement now or prior to sale?
No, I'm looking for it before we sign off on this. It's got to be done
Prior to plan signature.
Trying to final signature. They've got 6 months to do it. Personally, I don't like anything that isn't documented tightly. You'll end up with an argument somewhere, and I hate giving fees too. But,
Well,
Careful.
lawyers got to eat too. Yeah, I think that it ought to be prior to plan signing as well. Is there any other discussion of items?
So, do we need to say anything about zoning board of adjustment, or is it's going to be required? It's in the conditions that they will have to go to the zoning board of adjustment.
have them approved as non-conforming lots.
But I understand that.
And
So
4A
prior to
covers the
plan
boundary
signing?
lines. Okay, any other discussion?
Is that understood by everybody?
Do you understand what that means? What all that stuff means that we've been discussing?
Yes, I do, about easement for the leach field and I
Putting
think
the
the
bound-
word is monumentation or something.
Put an iron
The
peg
iron
in a key
pins.
place.
Right.
Yeah, have the surveyor come out and put the iron pins along the new boundary line between the two properties. And the other thing is that for reasons we haven't discussed, but, with Tim discussed, there's some need for you to go see the zoning board for some relief from them because of the non-conforming lots. But that doesn't have anything to do with us. That's a legal requirement that we don't really control.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
In Ms. Harris' memo to you, she puts down address the following planning staff technical comments, and then lists A through H items that involve floodplain, addresses and title blocks, shoreline protection. I'm wondering, are those also conditions that we need to?
Those are conditions of approval. However, the folks that drew this for you can probably solve all of that stuff in about an hour. So it wouldn't take them very difficult. And then they'd have the final plan ready for our signature. It would have the conditional easement and all of that.
All right.
So
that those are also conditions of approval.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, the technical ones are meant to be just that technical. There's some comment, there's some note, there's some line to draw, but it's not heavy lifting stuff to do.
Okay.
So, other discussion by members of the board? Any other questions?
No.
All in favor of granting final approval subject to the discussion here tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700. You're approved.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7. Brighter Horizons Environmental Corp. and James E. Longa and Son Incorporated and James E. Longa Revocable Trust. Review for consideration of an extension of the previously granted 6 months extension to comply with the conditions of an approval granted by the Planning Board on June 18, 2013 for a waiver of full site plan review for an application proposing partial reclamation of a sand and gravel pit located at 17 Twin Bridge Road in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 5D1, Lot 10, and Tax Map 5D4, Lot 74-1. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
My memo pretty much spells it out. This was approved back June last year for the proposed partial reclamation. Back in July, you granted a 6-month extension that is set to expire on January 21st. They are still pursuing the appeal process for the denial of the required permit from DES, which is still pending and yet to be resolved. The staff's position is that there haven't been any changes to ordinance and regulation that impact the project, and we're comfortable with a second 6-month extension effective from January 22nd, which would create a new deadline of July 22nd, 2015. And that the conditions in the June 2013 decision would continue to apply should the extension be granted.
Okay, and I also want to note for the applicant's benefit, for the public's benefit, we also have, that's been shared with us, a letter from the Department of Environmental Services dated January 22nd, 2014, related to this project, which is their denial letter to the applicant, which is what the applicant is now appealing. Mike, I saw your hand go up.
Just a quick question, Tim. Did the state
microphone?
Did the state notify the town as a, like a butter, or to be part of the process when it went through there?
No.
I did not.
Although the denial letter is copied to Eileen.
Copied Eileen, yeah.
It didn't go to my office, I should say that.
Okay. I think that based on Mike's question and comment, and I sort of agree with it, there may be some interest on behalf of some in the town to be aware of the process at DES, and if there is an opportunity to weigh in and speak to do that, how can we, what can we do as a planning board to make sure that we're in that loop?
I'll be blunt and frank. I don't think anybody who is employed by the town of Merrimack has the expertise necessary to weigh in confidently on any of the issues related specifically to the permit.
How do we make sure that the planning board is aware that there's progress or process going forward at DES? Is there a way?
At this stage, I'll turn it over to the applicant's attorney, but until we hear one way or the other from DES as to the resolution of the appeal, I don't expect there will be much, if any, involvement from the town on this.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Give us an update on the project.
Sure. Roy Tilsley. I'm here from Bernstein Shore, Sawyer and Nelson for the applicant. I'm subbing for Greg Michael tonight. I think Greg got the original permit. He was kind enough to put me in charge of the appeal, so I'm here tonight and not Greg. The appeal is still pending. We were actually scheduled for our appeal hearing on Thursday, December 18th, in 2 days. That has just been continued. We are waiting for a new date to get scheduled. We are expecting that will be January or February One of the challenges here is the Waste Management Council, who we're appealing to, meets one day a month. So when you run into sort of the typical, someone can't make a hearing or a witness has a problem, you don't get rescheduled 10 days out, you get rescheduled 1, 2, 3 months out, and that's why this has been pending a bit. But we were ready for the hearing last Thursday, and they told us not to come, so we are ready to go, and I expect that the hearing will take place early next year. In terms of the town involvement, I mean, I'm happy to keep the town involved with the process, either through Tim's office or town council. If anyone wants to come testify in support of the project, I'd be happy to call you as a witness when the time comes. It's certainly something that, well, I agree with Tim. I think the technical issues, are probably not something I would look for Tim or anyone from the town to address. Certainly, I think it's helpful for DES to understand that this is a project that the town supports, because some of the criteria that I have to address concern the feasibility of other types of ways of reclaiming this gravel pit. And knowing that the town supports it, I think, could be helpful. So if the board's interested in having a say here, I can maybe make that happen. I certainly can keep Tim involved so that you guys know where we're at in the process.
Sure. I think some members of the board probably have the same concerns that DES has. And then from the planning board standpoint, I want to be cautious about you're using the phrase that we support. We've approved it as having met the standards in the town. I don't know that support sounds like we're happy that and encouraging and all of that. And maybe some are, maybe some aren't, but I don't think that that's what the board's vote in the past has encapsulated.
Understood.
So, can you give me, as best you can in a short period of time, a little thumbnail of what the arguments are on appeal to address the issues that DES has highlighted in its letter?
I mean, basically, the arguments are pretty simple. DES has a process to certify a solid waste product for this type of use, in that we have met the criteria that DES's process establishes for use of this particular material, which is the same material that was proposed to you folks back when Greg did the original application.
Okay, so when they're saying the use of contaminated soil proposed will introduce low-level contamination in an area that's currently uncontaminated, use of the existing product, uncontaminated soil, does not introduce contamination. Therefore, the proposed waste-derived product is less effective than use of the existing product. Tell me what they're getting at and what your response is to that.
I think what they're getting at is
clean fill is better than contaminated fill. Why don't we use clean fill?
Our position is you've got a way of using something less than clean fill if certain criteria are met, and that we've gone through an application and we've met those particular criteria, and you need to, it's not as simple as less than clean fill can't be used. You have a process to analyze whether less than clean fill can be used. We've met all the requirements of the process, and really DES's response is, well, we don't want this to happen. They have a process, we've met the requirements, we should be entitled to do this. And those requirements obviously, concern all the issues that you folks would be concerned with in terms of what effect this, less than clean fill, potentially less than clean fill would have on the project.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that I'm seeing the connection between at least the standards that they're describing here, which basically both of them have the same kind of relation, that the use of the fill that you want to use, and when you're saying contaminated, uncontaminated, I know it's mildly.
Right. I mean,
it's not perfectly virgin sand.
Right.
Right. But we're not talking about, waste disposal. But they're saying that their standards give you permission to use that kind of fill when there's an identifiable, unfulfilled need in society to do so. And from DES's standpoint, as long as there's clean fill in the world, there's not an identifiable, unfulfilled need to use dirty fill.
Right, and we're saying you've got a process that allows less than clean fill to be used if there's an identifiable need, and that we've met the criteria that you've established in terms of economics, in terms of what material is out there, as to why there is an identifiable need to use this material in this project. I mean, essentially, this is a unique pit, It's an old pit, it's a deep pit, it's not the kind of pit you typically see these days. The idea that we're going to fill this pit with virgin soil is not really economically feasible. I mean, if that was the case, it just doesn't make sense economically. It wouldn't happen. That's why there's a need to use material that may be less than virgin material, and to do it on a responsible basis that meets their criteria. So, again, I don't think it's as simple as DES saying we don't want anything less than clean material in our state.
Okay, I got you. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to get an understanding. I know that it's not
good practice.
It's not a vote for us to decide
Understood.
DES standards because we're not the experts on those. Although I think perhaps Mike is, but the rest of us are.
From staff perspective, there are protections built into the conditions of the original approval that should the appeals fail and the permits not be granted, this approval is not valid. So the town is protected regardless of what decision DES makes, should the extension be granted.
Well, if DES gives them approval, then they're good to go, and we assume that that only occurs if DES is satisfied of the environmental situation and or the applicant succeeds in some level of appeal, however high that might go. And if the applicant is unsuccessful with DES and whatever appeals exist after that, this thing never goes anywhere anyway, so our approval doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Other comments or questions?
Okay. Nope, I think you said it well. Yep.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess, you know, as I expressed in my previous, or the previous time it came forward, I wasn't in favor of the project. I felt that there were a lot of unanswered questions with regards to the contaminated fill and its effect on the environment, certainly in a very sensitive area of town. There aren't very good systems and controls that DS has in place yet for this type of facility, and certainly the management of it was very suspect to me. So it still is very questionable. I think the DS is addressing it effectively. Their rules don't fit this purpose very well. I think the whole waste-derived concept was born out of trying to resolve off-product, off-spec waste that could be reused in some fashion, that could come from a manufacturing process. They're trying to fill that same argument into gravel or contaminated fill. I think there's a relationship there, but I think DS is still having a hard time seeing how it fits directly to that waste-derived product definition. So I think that's what the debate is about, and whether or not it fits the rule. I think there are also some other unanswered questions that I was hoping, if the town was noticed on and we could be part of the discussions, we could see if there was opportunities to, I guess, at least be aware of the impacts on town, such as we talked about, and Nelson and I recognized this early. They're saying 750,000 yards of soil would be coming into the community. It's a lot of trucks. We haven't really addressed that as to how that would be managed, how that would be an impact on our infrastructure, and what sort of cost offsetting we might be able to receive as a town for that impact. And just other impacts would be what assurances we would have as a town that had this corporation go belly up, that there are financial assurances that are in place that are protected, that the town could tap into if they have to take over the land and manage any sort of residual contamination. So those are some of my concerns that I still feel are out there and don't feel that are being answered either through the DS process or I don't think that we effectively addressed them during the last planning board.
Thanks for sharing those. In terms of the extension, Attorney Tilsley, if it's part of what the board wants to see, will you keep Tim's office informed
absolutely.
of hearings and copy them on your filings with the ES?
Absolutely.
And then Tim, if those come to you, you'll give them to Mike? Or the rest of the board too?
Yeah, thanks.
Other comments or questions? What's the will of the board on the applicant's request for an extension?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we grant a 6 months extension exactly as proposed by Mr. Tim Thompson's memo.
Plus the addition of notice to...
Plus asking for the addition for the Community Development Office to be kept in touch by the applicant's attorney.
Is there a second for that motion? No second? No second. Second by Mike. Any other discussion? Ezra, you got a hand up? No. All in favor of granting the motion for the 6-month extension, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0 to grant your
Thank you,
extension.
folks.
Thank you, and thank you for your willingness to share the information about DES.
And hopefully I won't see you in 6 months. Thanks.
Item number 8 on our agenda. Don Shagnon of Townsend Oil and Propane as the applicant, and Frank Chudowski as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a waiver of site plan review for the use of the existing 3,400 square foot building as a retail office distribution facility located at 759 DW Highway in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 7E, Lot 42-1. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, you'll find the memo from Jillian that gives the background on this particular case. This particular site, as you recall, was actually in front of the board back in March with a different applicant looking to utilize the site. That was American Asphalt Paving. At that time, the board had determined that they were not comfortable with a waiver of full site plan review, so those minutes are also included in your packet. The discussion in front of you for tonight is whether or not this particular application is suitable for a waiver of full site plan review. If the board makes such a determination, staff has appropriate recommendations for comments and conditions is in Jillian's memo.
Thank you, Tim. Please introduce yourself. Don't forget to sign in and tell us what it is that you have proposed. And specifically, the staff has recommended that the board carefully consider completeness because you're asking for a waiver of full site plan review. So make sure you address that waiver request and the waiver of full site plan review.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Well, my name is Don Shagnon, and I am a partner in Townsend Energy, or Townsend Oil and Propane. And I want to thank you for taking your time this late at night.
Thank you for staying, I think we should say.
Hear my application. The reason for the application is to conduct business at 759 Daniel Webster Highway, formerly known as the House of Stone. We'll be using the 3,400 square foot building to operate Townsend Oil and Propane, and we're a retail heating oil and propane company. The property is zoned I-1. It will be used as a propane heating oil office and distribution point, which is part of I-1's requirements. We will have 7 employees, and the hours of operation will be Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The parcel will be serviced by septic and well. Fuel and propane will be in the trucks parked overnight. 12 parking spaces are required by code for this operation, and it's my request that the board consider making useful purpose of this parcel. And we are basically making no changes to the property. The paved area is where we're going to park the vehicles is already existing. We're not adding any pavement. We're not changing the size of the property, the building. We're not changing any of the soil conditions, the paving, or anything else. And we're moving into an existing building that I understand has been empty for a while from the couches and everything else that have been left there almost every night that Frank's been trying to keep cleaned up. So basically what we would propose to do is to move into the existing building. Of course, it does need some attention, but we don't plan on making any additions or anything else to it. And that part of it will be used as a place for people to stop off and leave off payments and, come talk to us about fuel oil, propane needs, or HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning needs. And we will have 3 trucks that'll be delivering heating oil and propane, but the actual storage facilities are located off-site. So, it's not that we'll be filling trucks there or there'll be no transports coming in there or anything like that. So we're not making any substantial changes to what was already being done there. The difference is that it was trucks bringing in granite and tile and other things, and so we're not making substantial changes to the previous use.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I know that we also heard a proposal for the same site to park paving vehicles before, and my concern at the time, not that different than now, the property has obviously been the stone place for quite a while, and now they've gone out of business. It looks a little bit overgrown and things. It's a significant property in one regard. It's the first thing that you see when you come into town.
Absolutely.
And it's not exactly the jewel that you want to put out your first foot forward. I think that
I agree with that 100%.
You know, some improvement and some landscaping and some fencing and a bit of a facelift is certainly important to that. And when we were hearing about paving and paving contractors, I think ultimately we decided we wanted to see full site plan review in order to know that the drainage has been dealt with and all of that. And I was trying to look at this plan that you have. Maybe, Tim, can you help me? Is this plan that's been marked up a previously approved site plan by the board? Because I don't see a signature block anywhere on this. Or
It's actually blocked off. It was whited out for purposes of utilizing the previously approved plan for purposes tonight.
So based on that, do you know when that original approval might have been, or whether the drainage and all that kind of stuff was ever looked at on this site?
Back the vintage of this plan, I would say probably not.
I believe it was 1987. I believe was the original approval.
So that's got Nelson's signature on it, huh?
It would if it was back then, yes.
I think there was one in 52, and then I think this one in 87.
52 was your first year, right?
There is a drainage certification stamped on the plan from James Seiler from back in the day.
That it met whatever those standards were.
Basically, I further certify construction proposed hereon will not significantly alter existing drainage patterns or significantly affect downstream drainage of properties.
There's another stamp of 1985 moving along to the right of that one. I certify this plan is based on an actual field survey made on the ground by this office in 1985 and having a precision greater than 1 in 10,000.
So that's second.
1985. There you go. 1985. This plan was done.
Yeah, that's when the survey was done of it. You got the original, Tim? Oh, that's still the marked up one.
It's still the marked up one.
It's
a little easier to read.
Okay. No, I'm comfortable with that. Mr. Shagnon, can you tell me a little bit more about what you plan to do to the site to improve its looks? Are you changing any landscaping? Are you changing any fencing?
Have you been by it in the past few days? I've already got Frank out there doing some work to it. But, this is going to be a retail place for people to come in. So we certainly plan on doing plantings. And when I met with the commission last night, we discussed using native New Hampshire plants and so on. So our plan is to dress up the front of the building. There's an area there of about 3 feet where we can do some plantings along the front. And there's also an area in the middle out there between the 2 driveway entrances where some plantings can be done. And the field to the left certainly needs a little attention. It is fenced in on 2 sides. So they've made an L out of a fence. I don't know what good that does you, but there is an L of a fence there. We plan on running this as a retail operation. So obviously one of the other things we're going to do is repaint the building. There's some holes, things need to be repaired and patched. Unfortunately, a lot of that can't be done until we get some weather that will allow us to do those types of things.
Yeah, certainly understand the weather. In terms of the plan, first of all, there are some Conservation Commission comments that I received by email either today or yesterday. Tim, did you get those?
Should we actually review this for acceptance, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's
trying to understand.
I think that's the key question that we've got for tonight, and I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, not sure it is complete. Did you receive the comments from the Conservation Commission?
I was there last night, and they verbally gave me what the comments were, but I have not received them yet.
The 3 recommendations that they have is that you committed to using no salt or no de-icing compounds in the parking lot, and they'd want that to be an actual condition in the approval. They'd recommend that we require only low phosphate, slow release nitrogen fertilizers, and first use a soil testing facility before you apply any fertilizers, if you choose to apply fertilizers. and that New Hampshire plants, native plants, be used for the landscaping. Those are the 3 comments from the Conservation
And I agreed
Commission.
with all of those. It certainly needs some landscaping along with some work on the building itself and some paint and other things to make it a presentable office.
So the area where you're going to park your trucks is gravel, not pavement?
No, it is paved.
It is paved?
Where is it? If I might ask.
Oh, if you're looking at it from the street, if you're looking at the plan from the street, they're drawn in on the left-hand side to the rear of the building.
They're right on the line between the grayish area and the white area. behind the
Correct.
building.
It's paved all the way back through there.
Just there to do it.
What is that?
So
Parking for 3 trucks.
Is there an unpaved or a gravel parking
yeah.
area?
There is a gravel area that is to the left of the building, but it is paved for about 50 feet, and then it goes to a gravel area. And where the person wanted to do the paving company was actually on the other side of the fence.
Okay.
Away from the building. There's another area over there that is on the other side of the fence that goes to the tree line, at least according to the drawings that I got. And they wanted to put a couple of dumpsters and trucks and so on the gravel. I'm not proposing to do any of that. I'm proposing to park on the existing pavement that's already there. There's probably enough pavement there to park 80 vehicles, but I don't need to do that. But I'm just saying that there's that much pavement there.
So that's all paved on the north side of the building?
Correct.
Doesn't show up entirely well, but if you look at the aerial photograph, you can kind of see where the pavement extends.
This one.
Just to the north of the building.
I also provided some photographs.
Keep
I think
go
she
to the
sent
front of the pack.
Right after the memo.
That shows me what? Nothing.
Just to the, it's tough to make out, but that area just to the north of the building is actually pavement. Then there's a grass area, then there's the gravel area.
Then there's the what area? What was the
There's an area of shrubby grass,
Yeah.
and then there's the gravel area to the north of
Yeah.
that.
In that grassy, it's pretty sandy also there. It's really gravel that, is just grown
Just
up.
overgrown, yeah.
And it's where they used to keep their granite slabs and all of that, because I could still see all of the remnants sitting there in the field. that
Are
need
you
to be
going to
cleaned
fence
up.
this all off properly, or are you just going to leave it open as it is now?
I'm going to leave that as a recommendation from the board. I would expect someday I would like to do that.
Well, I'm
because
more
I just think to leave it two-sided like that is not accomplishing anything at all. So, do I need it fenced? I don't, because I'm not really putting anything there. But we certainly would consider finishing it off if that's something you'd like
Let
to
me
see.
turn it round why I was asking the question. You've got trucks there full of oil. What's stopping some lunatic, and we have enough in society in general, going into your truck, turning the valve open, opening the
Well, they
valve?
can't do it because they'd have to have the keys to put the pump on. They don't. They're not. It's not going to drain on its own. You need to pump it out. You need to put the PTO engaged.
All right, I'll buy it.
Oh, but
I
no-
don't, but I hear what you tell me. You mean
Well,
you
I mean,
don't
that's
think
how they
anybody
operate.
can get in there and open all the valves and that it won't leak through the pump without the PTO drive engaged? It can't leak at all?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that somebody could figure out a way to do something to get like some out of the hose.
Well, what about
but in the truck itself, there is no drop on these trucks. They're a top load truck. It's not a 1965 truck, which you can just unscrew the bottoms and watch it drop out.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
it's got to come
right.
through
In
the
today's things, these are all top load trucks, and you would have to pump it off. So
Okay.
somebody would have to go in, jump start the vehicle, know how to engage the PTO,
All right,
and
okay.
then pump,
Yep.
pump the oil.
So you're saying it's safe?
And I think whether or
Yes.
not all those things are possible, a chain link fence certainly isn't the added layer of security that prevents all of that good stuff. So,
No matter what we do, right? Somebody can find a way to do something. But I would
It's the
say
bottom
that
load. It's not a bottom drop truck. That's what I was
It's
concerned.
the same way with you have Roche oil down down the road, theirs are parked out there. They're the same size trucks. They're just a home delivery truck. It's not transport trucks.
Okay.
It's just a home, it's just home delivery.
Thank you.
trucks.
I think that the L-shaped fence, obviously it isn't a fence that keeps anything in or keeps anything out, but it may have been a visual screen or intended to be a visual screen, and I don't know whether the chain link has any of those slats they put in them to make them block.
It has nothing.
It may once have had
It is
those.
really, and it's really kind of in disrepair, so even,
Yeah, it's an
even if I
eyesore
don't
itself,
finish it,
yeah.
I need to repair what's already existing, because in looking at it, not much has been done to the building, the land, or the, or anything else for a long time.
Let me offer my comment on sort of what you've presented to us so far. I support the idea of putting this site to use. I think while it's in disrepair and it's disused, it's getting worse and worse looking. So I like the idea of having something go on in those buildings. But if I held a vote tonight, I don't know what I'm voting for, because there's some things we've talked about that aren't on a plan. I don't know where we would put landscape. I know that you want to put some, but usually we have a drawing that says they're going to go here. I know where your trucks are going to go, and I'm kind of okay with that. There's a sort of a flag part of the lot that goes to the south and then contains the entrance to some other property. And if it's the one that I'm thinking of, it's in a terrible state of disrepair down there.
I asked Frank to call the fire department, see if they burned the building down this there.
I think that's what they told us when we were here with the papers.
I did actually ask
that.
them to do that. In fact, we had that discussion because although it's not totally visible from where I'm at, it's somewhat visible. So I told them maybe you ought to call the fire department and ask if they want to practice burn, because it's kind of sitting there.
And I support that idea and doing something else with the lot. I support doing something with this lot and putting some business there and getting going. I'm just afraid that I need to know more. I need more information in order to...
What I would say to you is that in our case, I mean, this is an oil and propane business, so I'm obviously here because I'm in the middle of my season. So I'm willing to do or to commit to a plan of improvements on the landscaping and everything else, subject to your approval, and your sign-off. I have no problem with that, as I told the commission last night. But I'm in the middle of the season. To be honest with you, if I'm going to do this in Merrimack, I need to know whether or not I can do it. Because, and I understand that's not your concern, but, February is going to be here, and then I'm into next year. March, April, I'm into next year. And I'm trying to use a property that's already zoned for it. It's already there. The building's there, the pavement's there. All I'm doing, I'm not doing anything that the prior person was not doing, except for I'm going to improve the property for you. It's going to look like it's an office building, and it's going to be an improvement, because when you come over that line from Bedford into Merrimack, it's the first building you see on the left. This one sits way back, but that's the first building you see on the left. It's not a very good advertisement, or it's the last one on the right when you're going out that you see.
I drive by it every day.
I think this is a use that the I-1 was designed for. It's what it's zoned for, and the property and the land need some improvement, and we're willing to do those improvements, and we're willing to submit that we will do those, and we'll provide them for your approval and the commission's approval, as I told them last night, because they want to make sure I use native New Hampshire plants. I'm from New Hampshire. I have no problem with that. And it won't all be molten laurel.
Put some flaming bush in.
No burning bush.
I know that Desiree, you had your hand up, but Tim may have something that's...
Well, just in terms of what Mr. Shagnan's talking about, typically when the planning board makes an approval like this, the improvements have to be made before the plan is signed and before you can occupy the facility. So that's part of the process that I think is still kind of missing here. Regardless of, if the board were to waive full site plan review, put a bunch of, you need plants here, you need to do this here, those plan revisions are going to need to be made, and the improvements are going to have to be done prior to occupancy being permitted within the building.
So what Tim is saying is
that
when
it comes to plantings, when it comes to plantings in this time of year,
yeah, I think that's what Tim's getting at, is that
I could do the plantings, but we all know they're going to be dead, and then I'm going to have to redo them in the summer. I mean, we all know that, right? I mean, I could go put them in there, but the fact of the matter is, You know, I've in my career, I've had 105 petroleum locations, okay? So I've done a lot of plantings in the middle of winter because people wanted to see them. And the fact of the matter is that I had to redo them again in the spring. And if that's the, you know, if that's the process, I will do it because I'm that committed to it. If I have to spend $2,000 now to do it, $2,000 to do it this spring, I will. Because I want to get this done and get it operational, and I want to bring some jobs to Merrimack, and I want to fix that building up and make it a presentable site.
So, so what you're saying is you want to start using that site ideally tomorrow?
I'd like to start using that site January 5th. Because it's going to take me that long to get it cleaned up and get it presentable.
We have a meeting on January 6th. Desiree, you had your hand up a little longer.
I just have a question. What is it that makes this application come before us? Is it a
Change
use?
of use.
So, because it was retail before?
Well, it is retail now.
Retail to retail. But it's one was stone and the other one's fuel.
Then, and it's considered a change of use because the product's
It's
changing.
a different dynamic given that it's, an oil and propane is more of a transportation-oriented retail business versus the straight retail that the Tables of Stone business was. So the ultimate determination that was made by Jillian in terms of is this something that requires change of use and approved by the planning board was yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then, as the planning and zoning administrator, we sort of crossed this bridge before. Once Jillian makes her determination, the planning board accepts that she's decided it's a change in use. If the applicant disagrees with that, that's for the zoning board to consider relief on. We don't have the ability to say, oh, it isn't a change in use, go ahead. We could approve it with the waiver or that sort of thing if we feel that we've got enough information that's appropriate. But as far as Jillian's determination, Nelson.
No, I was going along with that. I'm uncomfortable with this plan the way it is. It just isn't complete. It isn't showing me what we're approving. It isn't showing Tim what he's got to enforce. It isn't giving us any record of what we wanted to see here. And I believe Mr. Shagnon has got the right approach, and it'd be a good use for the site. But I just am not comfortable with this for a plan. I can hardly read it. And I was going to ask if there's more than one driveway access here, because apparently, according to Tim's memo, we need state approval on the driveway access for this change of use, and that in of itself is
not going to happen by January 5th.
Not going to happen by January 5th. So
we simply don't have jurisdiction on this section of DW Highway. That's DOT's call for driveway access.
Yeah.
There are
And
actually two driveways.
I was afraid of that, although it isn't clear on here. I know from experience there are two.
Right.
And I'd just like to see what it is you're going to do. I don't mind, taking the existing plan and marking it clearly, but this smudgy black stuff that's on the plan we have, and the lines are fuzzy, and it's just not something that I want to sit here and say, okay, I approve that if you put a few bushes on it.
Okay, I guess the only changes I go back to Desiree's question, because that's what I asked her, because it is a retail facility. I'm not having propane storage or oil storage on this property. I'm running a retail business out of it, which that was. The only change I've made to this is I've drawn in 3 parking spaces that she required, or the regulations require. I haven't done any other changes to this plan. I did put the fence in, which was not on the plan, but it's existing. I did finish drawing that in. But I didn't make changes to the plan other than the 3 parking spots.
Ultimately, Jillian's decision was that this was changing from straight retail to retail/office/distribution.
I agree with what you're saying, that it's an appropriate use for this piece of property. And I agree that it's, with what you're saying, that it's great to have some plan to rehabilitate this distressed piece of property, and that's on the threshold as you come in town from Bedford. I don't disagree with that 100% at all. I think it's absolutely correct. But I do have concerns about the plan that we have in front of us, is just whether it's enough information to allow us to give it the kind of review that we give to every other applicant that we have. And what Tim was talking about is if we sat here tonight and worked through it and said, okay, well, let's draw some landscape on here, and let's draw some fences on here, and let's draw some parking on here. All that stuff's got to get built before we sign off on the plan, and you can actually occupy this office anyway.
Not before you sign off on the plan. You can sign off on the plan once it addresses the plan changes itself. In terms of being able to then move to occupancy, it's construction of all improvements as shown on the plan. Typically for landscaping, we can bond for that and allow for our department to sign off on a CO as long as the landscaping is bonded for to be installed and it's the appropriate season. Other things, fencing and things of that nature, it's a judgment call as to what we determine is feasible within winter months and what is not.
And I would be happy to provide a bond for any kind of plannings that the board would request.
The one wild card from my perspective is DOT driveway permit, because I don't know how long that's going to take.
Is the 1985 plan that was sort of the one that got marked up, has a gravel driveway going to the building you want to have the fire department take care of, and then sitting on the property line there's existing garage to be removed. Is that garage still there?
There is no garage there.
Okay, so that's gone. So what was proposed in 1985 at least happened. We don't know. We've got a certification that the drainage did what it was supposed to do in 1985, but no idea whether that meets today's standards.
If there's no changes to impervious surface being proposed, then there really is not a need for a drainage analysis for purposes of the regulations, because the amount of runoff today is going to be the same as the amount of runoff tomorrow if there's no changes made to the site and the amount of impervious surface.
Even if the 1985 changes made it worse?
If it was built per this plan, then that's what we go off of, because this is the most recent site plan approval we have.
Okay.
We've got a certification that the drainage worked in 1985 standards, against 1985 standards. Whether the standards have changed, maybe yes, maybe no. They probably have, haven't they? Yeah.
They probably have, but this the certification that's on here is a little bit more than it makes 85 standards. It actually says it doesn't make it any worse than before the construction was built.
Yeah.
The construction proposed will not significantly alter the existing drainage patterns or significantly affect downstream drainage projects, which is the essence of our modern drainage regulations, is don't screw up anybody down the stream. Tom?
And I won't be making any changes to that.
Right. Tim, if he's not making any changes, why do we need to look into DOT for driveway permits?
They may not require an alteration of the permit, but anytime there's a change of use, we're obligated to notify DOT that there's a change to the use within with a driveway that accesses your roadway. You need to determine whether or not that requires an update to the permit or not, based on the different use of the property, the different type of traffic that's coming to and from. That's DOT's determination as to whether or not anything needs to be changed in the driveway permit.
What's the applicant's situation while that goes on? Does he use it as it is, or does he not allowed to cross over that magic line?
The receipt of that updated permit would be a precedent condition that we would not sign the plan, that we would not allow the planning board to sign the plan until that permit is agreed.
DOT says it's either good the way it is or it needs
alteration.
a modification.
Correct.
How long do we think that might take?
For something like this, I have no idea.
I did make a call after she told me that would be one of the requirements. I've not made a formal presentation to them, but I did make a call. I explained the difference and where it was. They knew the property, believe it or not, when I talked to them.
They're not too far up the street.
And I don't think that's going to be an issue because it has the double entry and everything else already paved, and there's clearance on both sides enough to be seen, and I'm not making a significant change to this. I'm not starting to bring transport trucks in and all this other stuff. I'm operating, basically a retail business out of there.
My only question is to when they take a look at this, A, whether they're going to require the closure of one of those two driveways, the one that's not being used, they may require it to be closed, or B, depending on the width of that driveway, are they going to require it to be narrowed? Those are the only two things I could think of that they might come up with.
So,
and if they do, those are things I'll have to do
Yeah.
before I can occupy.
So if you're parking 3 trucks overnight on the property, why? I mean, if they can't refill at your location, they have to go somewhere else to refill.
Well,
what's the value in parking on there? Because
the-
that seems to be what's causing this to change use, is that it's got this additional trucking factor in it.
Well, it is more convenient for them actually to be there because the people come in the morning, they get all their tickets, they go out for the day to do their deliveries. And, you know, otherwise I have to have them go to one of the filling locations, come back into the office, get the tickets, and then go back out. So it is more convenient for the 3 trucks to be there. And as I said, it's, you know, there's parking there for 12 vehicles, so having 3 trucks parked there,
I
you know.
fully understand that having those 3 trucks there is not a problem as far as space and pavement is concerned. It just seems to be causing some consternation about the use of this facility, going from strictly retail to retail and trucking and office and other stuff. And the trucks seem to be a key factor here that's causing difficulty for you to be able to occupy it.
Could you occupy it temporarily without the trucks there, just running your office, and then get the approval and the things that you've promised to do in due course, and then bring those trucks in there once you finish that process? Is that something that's a workable solution, Tim?
I would be amenable to that.
So you'd get the permission to occupy it as the office in January 6th when you got it cleaned up. 3 trucks can't stay there overnight until you've got a little bit more details in a plan and something that the board can gavel in.
I can live with that.
You can live with that? We can live with that? Does that require any vote by us tonight?
My neighbors are going to wonder why they're parked in my yard, but I can.
That would not require.
I live in Bedford, you're all set.
If that's the case and the trucks were not going to be located there, then we'd be out of the change of use situation, which would not require the planning board approval. What would then require the planning board approval would be the introduction of that into the property, which I think if the board can give the applicant direction tonight as to what you want to see, we can table this to a date certain or table indefinitely until such time that he has the chance to put the thing together and come back to us with what you're looking for.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense, and if it works for you, it works for us. What I'd like to see in a plan, and it's okay to work from this 1985 plan, whatever you did to it that makes this area kind of shaded on the side, don't do that again.
That's actually existing. It's the other stuff I did that's not shaded.
Oh.
The shaded is actually the existing plan, so
see if we can find another copy of it.
I'll do something to improve that, okay?
Or redo.
Tim, have we looked at the number of parking spaces and whether it meets the standards? I'm almost certain that it does, but have we actually looked at it?
We've got a section of Jillian's memo that we require 1 space per 300 for the office plus 1 per company vehicle. So you're at 2,680 square feet and 12 spaces, which is what is required.
Okay, so it's got what it needs. Yep. So I'd want to know what you plan to do with the fence, where you plan to do landscaping, and all of that.
Let me ask you, would your preference be that I finish that fence?
If you're going to park trucks there, I'd love it if your fence shielded the view of that from the road,
the north.
so people don't see it.
Yeah. As you're coming from the north.
I'll put it on the plan. I'm more than willing to do that.
Yep. And so if that chain link fence is basically falling apart, we'd want the kind that has visual barriers, either chain link or stockade, whatever you like.
It's falling apart because it wasn't put in correctly. I kind of walked it, and the cement footings look like they were hand done by somebody. It's not that the fence is in bad shape. It's that it was never installed properly. So if I'm going to finish the fence anyway, I will have them put it in properly and use the 200 feet that are there, and then bring 200 feet around with gates so that we can plow through and out of that area.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Is the
building? I'm sorry. Did you want a planning diagram also of plants and improvements?
Not in extraordinary detail, but at least a little bit. Draw the area and say we're going to put 10 plants here. Or a tree, or whatever,
shrubbery or whatever. There's some guidelines in
the regs,
in our regulations on that. Yeah.
Whatever you're going to do for signage is probably something that has a separate approval, but tell us what that's going to be.
I'm going to use the existing, there's an existing sign out there.
Just change the
I'm
face.
going to just change the face of it, that's all.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I don't need any more signage than that. That's a pretty good size sign. So
The-
I plan on having a sign company come in, take that face off and put the new face on, that's all.
That house on the lot to the south that you said the fire department can come and get.
Well, I suggested to Frank and his partner that they call the fire department and have them come do that, but I don't think I could give you that authority. But
Yeah, sure, of course. Is that existing gravel driveway across this lot still in place and in use?
You know, I believe it is still, I know it's still there. There's a chain going across it. I don't know if it's in use. I think he changed it up because he said people were bringing trash down there and dumping it off.
Yeah.
So he chained it and locked it, so now they dump it up front. So I walked out the back of the building, there's a big sofa out there, it's just, so,
With respect to the stuff that's on this lot, it's not something you draw on a plan that says get rid of sofa, but
oh,
clean all that up.
it'll be perfectly clean. In fact, if you go by it today or tomorrow, you will see that, I've already, had Frank and his crew out there said, I'm not gonna start leasing it till it's at least gets to a clean spot for me to start with.
Have Frank
And then
or
I'll take care of it
somebody-
after that.
Have Frank or somebody, whoever has got the responsibility for this, determine whether that driveway has an underlying easement that supports it, since it's for a different lot, so that you can tell us that when you come back.
Because he owns both of those lots.
Yeah.
So there's no easement, so.
And he owns both of those lots.
Okay. If he owns both of those lots, that's probably why there's no easement, because you can't give yourself one. Although it is weird to have that access across another lot with no support for it. It may be a condition that if these lots are ever sold out of common ownership, that an easement's created at that point, or something like that. Anything else that folks want to see on a plan or a design?
What about lighting?
Yes, lighting. Is there outdoor lighting, site lighting?
No, but there will be. And there'll be motion lights going towards the front area of the building and the back area and out towards the trucks.
Okay.
And they'll
With
be what,
respect to
mounted
lighting-
on the building?
They'll be mounted on the building and they're motion lights.
And they'll have shutters so you can't look at, it doesn't interfere with planes coming into airport.
Exactly, yeah. They're just the ones that are just, they're face down. I've had them at all the, all of my locations.
We don't have to go through all those details tonight. Spend some time with Tim's department and find out what you need to know about lighting and standards.
Tim's going to be my new best friend.
Well, we don't want to put you to the point of needing a lighting plan. But we don't want to put you to the point of having to do an engineer design a lighting plan for you, but the key element of it is that you got to keep your light on your property. So not up in the air, not over the boundaries, not into the road, all of those kinds of things. And so
Not super intense that it creates a hotspot.
Yes.
No, there'll be low wattage.
is that existing
Flooded
sign internally illuminated or
It is.
externally?
I don't know if
internally?
it works, but it is.
And it's your intent that it would become functional as an internally illuminated sign?
I would like it to, because I think it also provides light and looks like people are actually there and using
Makes you
it.
make people think it's occupied.
Okay. When you change that sign face, there are some conditions in the regulations that talk about contrasting colors and what percentage of it is white versus black, because if you make the whole face white with black letters, it essentially becomes a big yard light, and there's limits and regulations on that again, talk to Tim. And Jillian.
We're with Tim again. You seem like you're a busy guy, Tim.
Anything else that folks are interested in seeing on a plan?
Well, if he wants to, okay, I'm sorry.
Let's go, Mike.
Sometimes when the guys do repairs, they'll bring back, larger pieces of equipment. Do you have a need to store that outside or do anything like that?
There's actually, first of all, if we will bring it to a dump. What I've found over the years, if I bring it back, nobody wants to take it. So all of my locations I've had in the past, you take the boiler out of the basement, it goes over to, there's people that'll buy it, first of all, because, they recycle it. So they take it and drop it off before they finish the day, because otherwise I end up with this pile of stuff, and then I gotta get somebody, 3 guys for 2 days to move mounds. It's easy if you take care of it every time. We've also run a lot of locations, so we have a pretty good relationship with supply houses, And most of the time, actually, they'll bring the new equipment over to the home for me, and they'll take the old equipment with them.
Okay. One of the things that you would put on a plan in that regard is, in the notes, no outdoor storage of
trash or anything like that.
Yeah,
Well, I'm going to have a dumpster
salvage
or
equipment,
something.
whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no
Yeah.
outdoor storage of any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Nelson, you had a hand up?
Well, I wanted to decide what he wants to do about driveway entrances, and maybe we have some answer by the time you come back from DOT.
I'd be happy to, contact them and get a formal.
If you want to stay with the existing, that's okay. If you want to close one off, that's okay. But just whatever
Well, it's
it
okay
is.
with us.
I think it's whatever they tell me.
Yeah.
It's going to be whatever New Hampshire DOT tells me.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, as I look at this plan, it's basically open from south of the building all the way to where the fence starts, and then it becomes two driveways because there's kind of a sign post in the middle that separates that. Is that right?
Here are.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The sign thing sits in the
Yeah.
middle, otherwise it's basically continuously open.
Yeah.
Well, this.
And then
so
there's
it's not
another
open
one.
here, is it? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
but the sign is the only thing that sort of makes it not open. Otherwise, the sign
Yeah, it
wasn't
could
there.
be, but yeah.
There's about a,
nothing
that
on this
right there is
picture that
about a
shows that
12-foot
curve
little
cut. Right.
island there.
Draw
around
that.
that sign with that sign in the center.
Mm-hmm. That's not on here, so draw it.
Okay.
Draw it on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. No, the plan should show what's existing out there, and I think he already knows about getting rid of this gray so we can see the boundaries of the property and that sort of thing. So just to clarify it and make it clear what it is we're going to have there. But I think you've covered all the issues that I had, Bob.
Anything else that anybody else wants to add? Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for
thank
being
you.
having the flexibility
You're
that
not
lets
done
us.
yet.
What's that?
Do you want to table to a date certain or
Oh,
table
absolutely.
indefinitely?
Because the gentleman wants to start on.
Well, he can
Well, he
start
can s-
tomorrow
He
with.
can start, 'cause
Without the trucks.
Oh, he
Without
can
the
start
trucks.
now. Of course he
Without the
can.
trucks.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is, in order for him to have the appropriate amount of time, that we table indefinitely and then re-notify when we come back for the formal.
That makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. So we
Yeah.
want to table it to a date uncertain or a date unspecified.
Just table it.
Just
Yeah.
table.
just table it.
Is there a motion to
I'll
that
second.
effect? Yes, Ray.
But would we need to, have we done any public comments for this?
We
haven't
technically haven't
accepted it.
opened a public hearing because we haven't accepted the application.
Thank you.
And we don't
No,
have
but
to
thanks
because
for
we're
looking
not
out for us
voting.
and making sure we're doing the right thing.
I think it's worth asking if any of these people are here to testify.
I don't know
on
if
this.
anybody here testify to this project? Seeing
Okay.
none.
All right.
Yes, and the one after that, there's a couple of them left. Yeah, two left. So is there a motion with respect to the table? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? We will see you when you're ready to come back, and you can do your business without the trucks until then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
Thank you
Look
for your
forward to it.
flexibility.
Sorry for the difficulty, but I'm glad we worked.
Oh, I appreciate all your input, and I will come back to you with everything you're looking for.
Well, that'll be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And you can count on me being open on January 5th. So.
Excellent.
So
Item
if
number.
you have any oil or propane needs, give me a call.
I got the natural gas in mind, so none of this.
We'll service it.
Mark Botnick of Project Tower Retail LLC is the applicant and owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a waiver of site plan review for proposed airport parking with shuttle drop-off at Manchester Airport located at 768 DW Highway in the I-1 and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 7E 40-1.
Yeah, you really need to cover it. Did you announce that at the beginning?
Yes.
They came in.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did announce at the very, very beginning of the meeting, obviously before you came in, they've asked for a continuance for tonight, so they're going to be back before us on January 6th. And I apologize for not picking up and realizing that situation.
That's why you were.
Well, have you enjoyed your stay here?
Want a cookie?
Yes. Please come have some cookies.
Have a cookie before you go.
If you actually think it's interesting, we got a few empty spots. You can come sign up and be a member.
Yeah, well,
I apologize for not realizing that you didn't get that announcement when we started out.
I saw Ken and I saw him leave, and I'm not sure why.
Well, thank you for speaking up when you did, so you didn't have to wait any longer than, quarter to 11.
Letting us know, and Ken, Tom, thank you for finding my boat keys. Those were my. You jogged up and you met me up there.
Oh, that was.
Oh, Mike.
That was Mike.
Did you find them?
I did find them.
Right.
So the neighbor had them and was kind enough to hand them over. So thank you for spotting them.
I love the Christmas tie too. That's great.
Thank you.
I got mine on. I saw Nelson's wearing a tie tonight too.
Yeah.
Got the Christmas
I got
spirit.
my green sweater on.
Got your Christmas sweater? That one doesn't count as one of the ugly sweaters. Okay, so we've at least read through the introduction into the record. Tim, what do we need to know about Mr. Botnick's project?
As you recall, Mr. Botnick's been in front of you previously for a pre-submission hearing regarding this particular proposal. He's here tonight requesting waiver of full site plan review to utilize some of the parking out of the driving range for shuttle service and remote parking for the airport. He is also aware that he will need to go to the zoning board for variance should he gain approval here tonight, and that is part of the proposed conditions in Donna's memo.
Thank you, Tim, for the introduction. Mr. Botnick, have you signed in? And if so, please introduce yourself and tell us where we're at.
Yes, I have signed in. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for staying on board tonight. It's late. So I think what you have there, and I sort of kept it general on purpose, and I guess we can sort of fill in the gaps, but what I'm looking to do is to sort of better monetize what we have here as an interim basis, and looking at the what exists now as a golf range. It has very, very limited use, and at best there's probably 10 or 11 cars at any given time, and then there's the remaining space that you could probably fit easily designated. You probably have 52 cars left out of the other spaces, and then there's of course extra space on the tarmac. So with that in mind, the thought was to have a drop-off shuttle in which people can come and use this sort of extra space as a place to park, and then they would come in the existing office, exchange keys, payment, and then we would take them over to the airport, and then of course come back when they're done doing their whatever they're doing, and it would be that simple. So it wouldn't change anything materially on the land at all at this point, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm looking into this, trying to keep everything sort of simple, not change anything except for some signage, and to have a shuttle. So
thank you for the quick presentation. I remember from the last time we had a discussion, the board looked very favorably on it in a pre-submission hearing. And I apologize if I'm missing the answer to my question. How much of your parking do you want to use for airport, or do you want to leave that sort of undefined? Or
it's a great question. I think that this will be a ground-up business, having no. You got to get an online site, got to get some traffic to that, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a slow build. Right now, I'd see this sort of slowly escalating into maybe, if I'm lucky, 50 spaces, right? So outside of that, I don't see this blowing out, although I could be wrong. If it does, then I would probably look for another site outside of ours to expand this.
How many spaces you got on your site?
We have 65 spaces.
So if you got to 50, you'd be keeping 15 for the driving range?
That's correct.
How is that number 15 compared to what you've been seeing for traffic at the driving range?
Yeah, great question.
What are the peak time?
I'd say 98% of the time. I mean, you've had a Saturday when it's perfect on April where there might be 15 cars at any time. I've never seen it over and above 15 cars. It just, I mean, it's not that busy. It really isn't. So I'd like to say it is. But we have my father-in-law and mother-in-law actually live there, and they manage the place. So they will be there on site, and to me that's an extra security layer that I would definitely like to have and will have there. So
Tom, you had a hand up?
The 15 cars includes your in-laws and or any employees?
You know, they actually, he likes to park like where, he parks right on the grass. I'm like, Jaja is his name. Jaja, can you not do that? But yeah, he would, I mean, if you include him, it'd be 14, so yeah.
And is that the only employee that would be
It
there?
is,
Or
it
are you
is.
going to have additional employees for this airport parking effort?
If they're there, they would be there on an interim basis, so they would be there on a short-term basis, rather. So yeah, you might have an extra car there.
And you have to have a transport vehicle as well to take people to the
There would
airport.
also be a transport vehicle there, correct.
Single one, or?
Yes, yeah.
Like a little minivan or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure yet, but like a little minivan, correct.
Little Ford thing. Is the office got an apartment in it, or?
Yes, upstairs.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of questions. I think that you.
Is it legal?
Is the apartment?
Yes, I came in, this is now
Many
6
years.
years. No, great question. I came in 6 years ago for a variance to get permission for,
did.
yeah.
Variances don't come from us, but I think
Yeah.
I remember hearing
Yeah.
that before when we were talking about doing
Yeah.
something else here,
Yeah.
car washes
Yeah.
or something. Nelson?
What is your proposal for the surface of this parking area that you've shown? Is this gravel, imported, or
Yeah,
Already there.
so it's already an existing parking lot that was already in place for the whole,
with all these 50 spaces?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
all
if you
there,
look
they're all
at
paved.
an overhead
Yeah.
picture on a map, they're all
Somebody
there.
had, somebody had an
Well,
ambitious idea for a very,
No.
very
Okay.
popular driving range.
Okay, all right.
That or they just had extra asphalt.
It
in the
looks
truck.
just like he's got it drawn.
Nelson, if these parking spaces didn't exist, this certainly would not be a waiver of full site plan review.
Yeah, no, I thought they were proposed for
No, they're
future.
there.
Yeah, okay.
They're there. He just wants to use them for
Yeah.
this instead of that.
Okay, and he took care of my other question by having somebody, I think you're going to need some kind of security on
Yeah.
all of this, and I think having a person living on the site is
Yeah.
kind of essential to making it work.
Yeah.
because,
Do you need lighting or anything to?
We have lighting, so we
On the
actually
parking
have,
lot?
yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job, set. So the first consideration for the board is whether to decide the application is complete. What's the will of the
Chairman,
board?
I make a motion that we accept this project as complete for consideration.
Is there a second? Second by Desiree. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700 for completeness. There's a waiver of full site plan review to consider. What's the will of the board with that?
I'll move that we waiver full site plan review because it's based on the previous site plan, which
Is
has
been approved.
has
Okay.
been approved. Yeah.
Is there a second for that motion? Second by Ms. Christensen for waiver of full site plan review. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700. Any member of the public or a butter wish to weigh in and offer any testimony? Let the record reflect the room is virtually empty at 5 minutes to 11. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Close the public hearing. Does the board have any questions for the applicant remaining before consider final action?
Chairman, I make a motion we grant final approval.
Is there a motion for, there's a motion for final approval subject to the conditions in the memo, I assume?
Yes, of course, subject to the memo of that Donna Poli put together dated December the 8th, 2014.
Seconded by Ms. Christensen. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
Nope.
700. Thank you for
Good luck.
waiting us out.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You're
Hey.
good to go.
Merry Christmas.
Okay. Now, we get to...
Oh, when are we?
Old Blood has already been moved. We got to vote to continue that.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, may I make a motion? We agree to a postponement of the Old Blood Properties Project LLC and Joseph K. and Mary L. Carroll co-applicants to the date certain of January the 6th, 2015 in the Matthew Thornton room of the Town Hall at 7:30 p.m.
Before I take a second on that motion, let me read it into the record just to have that part of my
Sorry,
job done.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I jumped you.
Not that anybody really listens to this, but Old Blood Properties LLC and Joseph K. and Mary L. Carrot co-applicants and co-owners, review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of an application for a cluster subdivision proposing 72 cluster residential lots and 4 open space lots located at Old Blood Road in the R1 residential district, tax map 5B, lot 1-1, 2, 3, 3-1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 231. And with that, I will accept your motion.
Will you accept my motion, or do you want me to make it again?
No, I accept your motion. Is there a second for Alistair's motion to continue it to January 6th? Second by Ms. Fault. Any discussion?
What was the date it's postponed to?
January 6th.
January 6th, thank you.
No further notion in this time and place.
That is specifically what they asked for.
Yeah.
Watch last night's meeting if you want.
Yeah, I think that they've actually got a good resolution in place. So, all in favor of granting the continuance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 7-0-0. The essence of the discussion is that they're going to do a traffic study and live by its results. So,
Did the school board agree to that?
you know, there was enough nodding heads that I would call it an agreement, but I don't think I saw a vote.
Not from what I heard, there wasn't. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is that it has created some consternation in circles down Star Drive. I will leave you with that.
Yeah, well, let them have it. That brings us to item 11, which is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. And you'll note that under discussion and other items, there is listed Bowers Landing of Merrimack LLC, discussion of revised plan depicting the sidewalk layout, which should be in your package. The applicant, what's that? Right before the minutes.
Before the minutes.
Before the minutes that we're not going to do tonight.
So that is this plan. Tim, do we need to know anything about this plan?
Just, this is one of the conditions of approval that the board put on this application several months ago, was that the applicant come back prior to finalizing the final plans to show the concept for the sidewalk layout for comment by the planning board before they move to final revisions and getting the plan for final approval.
Okay. Now, noting that this isn't necessarily agendaed for a public hearing, you're here, and if you'd like to present it or describe it very briefly, noting that it's 11 p.m.
All I will say is this. I got the point here that at 11 o'clock at night, next time I'll put sidewalks on the plans before I come to the planning board hearing.
Well, that's
Thanks. Got it.
I did review your plan. I think you did a great job. I think the sidewalks go everywhere that they need to go. You got crosswalks in the right places. The little teardrops are where the traffic is so low. There isn't really need for a sidewalk, but you pick them up as soon as people get to the outside of those little cul-de-sac teardrop shapes, and then they've got sidewalks everywhere else they could want to go in that phase. So
It's 40%. It's
Good
about
job.
1,150 linear feet, so kind of what we talked about.
Terrific job.
I would like to take the opportunity on behalf, I think, Mr. Chairman, saying this is a first-class improvement. I wish everybody else did it the first time round.
Sounds good. Tim, as a item of discussion, it does not require a vote of us. You've satisfied your requirement, and your debt to us is paid.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Are there any other items of concern or discussion? CIP, yes, let's address those. If we do this right, we may be able to address it in a couple of votes. I think with respect to the schools, they have 8 items all listed as necessary.
Need a reminder as to what the 5 categories are?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, give us one.
Category 1 would be urgent, needed immediately for public health and safety. Category 2 is necessary, needed within the next 3 years. Category 3, desirable, within 3 to 6 years. Category 4, deferrable to outside of the 6-year program. And Category 5 would be inconsistent, not congruent with community development goals.
Okay. So the school board has suggested everything except for their high school field upgrade is necessary. They didn't put any rating at all on the field upgrade. What's the will of the board? We have in the past occasionally addressed all of them in one single vote, saying we approve it subject to X, Y, or Z. Lynn? I'm glad you remembered this, Tim, because I would have walked right out without doing the CIP.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Walden's going through, I have to say I share, I think, her concern that the whilst I know they need new SAU offices, I think the proposal to produce such a larger facility, much of which is due to them building in a huge conference room, I do not believe they need it. I believe within they should be considering alternatives to building a new hole in the ground, they should extend the middle school. They must have somewhere better to live in, but I don't think their proposal is the right proposal. So it's yes, it's necessary, but I don't like their plan.
So you change it to desirable? A change is desirable.
Part of that.
Still necessary. Yeah.
It's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. I don't think this is the right solution, and I don't think they'll get it through the.
I don't know that you're given that choice to vote on.
Well,
That's not what you're being asked to vote on.
Necessary or
I saw
desirable.
a couple of people making notes when we talked about that.
I think that they did take notes, and I did think they'd consider it. I happen to think a couple of things. I think it's absolutely necessary. I've been to the SAU office. I've been to the special ed office. It's terrible. Absolutely necessary. If the difference between what the office space plus a conference room that's basically going to be double the size of this room, I think the school administrative unit, where meeting with teachers and all that, having a conference room is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I think meeting in a cafeteria on kid tables, subject to the public walking by whenever they feel like it, or some other use like a kid's play or something like that, is just not something to expect the SAU to do. And moreover, the cost that they're talking about for this SAU office, and I know this is for the voters to decide, not me, being roughly equivalent to an AstroTurf field, I think easy to say, let's have a SAU office that's first class and run the school in a first class way, if it's roughly the same size budget as redoing the lawn out back. So.
I personally think you're wrong, Mr. Chairman. I think if you put it before the voters, they would be willing to pay twice for an AstroTurf field rather than an. I mean,
I think from the voter standpoint, no question. Athletics and those extracurriculars get a lot of support.
They will get it, and I think they should be making an SAU office that stands a good chance of getting through the voters.
I think,
and I don't think this will.
Well,
that's not my decision.
I can't predict what the voters would do. I think that they're on the verge of having somebody condemn their existing buildings and force this issue. In which case,
they've got to have something.
It will get approved by the voters. I mean, their buildings are literally that bad.
They are.
Yeah, pass the candy cans down there. So
they're actually less harmful.
That said, let's do some business. What's the will of the board with respect to? Oh, you have a comment.
Do we have the ability to move items between years?
We have in the past written memos that say we recommend that such and such be pushed back a year or pushed back a year.
What do you want to move then?
What I will just say, based on my own experience and 17 years of doing this, the process that currently we're using is somewhat backwards. The process I've had in every other community is that the CIP goes in front of the planning board before it goes to the school board and to the town council. The planning board makes recommendations on where things should go, and then the ultimate decisions are made by the two governing bodies. Given the way that things have been done now, they've already voted to put these things where they are. So I would say that yes, you can make suggestions, but I would not recommend making any specific changes to the spreadsheets themselves.
To elaborate on Tim's comment a little bit, except for the things that are intended to occur in the next fiscal year, I think they are taking notes and taking our recommendations into account as those future years go. So I don't have any problem with writing them a memo saying we think it ought to be done, not with the ones for next year, but the things further out in the future.
Further on, yeah.
What do you want to change, Lynn?
I agree with that.
I want to move the track out a year.
Put the track and the football field in the same place so that it does what Desiree said and gets done at the same time.
Yeah, that will make sense.
To make a suggestion, I'll make a motion.
Motion to recommend moving the track out a year to correspond with the football field and gain some efficiencies from that. Seconded by
I'll second
Desiree.
it. Yeah.
Any discussion on that suggestion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any Desiree seconded it, and the motion is to move the track from 16-17 to 17-18. And it's been approved 7-0-0 as a recommendation. Is there anything else that we would want to put in a memo of general opinion that we tend to send to the boards with these?
We may want to give some kind of a thought to some kind of a rating to the field upgrades. I mean, right now that's unrated. I don't have a problem with anything else being called necessary. and I'd be willing to vote all those, but maybe we'd ought to make some kind of recommendation on the field.
It should
I
be
think they haven't really decided.
desirable then,
Yeah.
Nelson.
I agree.
Desirable,
I agree.
or the last one was deferrable or exploratory?
No,
or
it's
something?
desirable.
It's urgent, necessary, desirable, deferrable, inconsistent.
Yep. And I think the message from the school board is that they kind of look at it as being deferrable, and
I
they're not
think-
sure whether it's going to happen when it happens.
That's right. I don't think
That's
they're
what I heard
sold-
from them, is they're not locked into this date either. It's just a date.
Yeah, but if we move the track upgrade back to line up with the field upgrade, they can't then defer the. You've got to put them together. You've got to.
They can do the track upgrade.
Deferable essentially means you recommend that it shouldn't be in the 6 years of the program.
No, I disagree with that. I think it's desirable.
Well, I'm not sure. I think the track has got damage that affects the safety of the athletes and all of that stuff. The football field could stay a grass field forever.
Right. And just be maintained, that's my point.
So do we have a motion, all necessary and then deferrable for the field upgrade? We already did that.
Yeah, we did vote to move the track. That approved 700.
I'll make that motion.
A motion to approve all items on their capital improvement budget is necessary with the exception of the field upgrade, which is deferrable. Correct?
And they don't have it listed anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that they're consistent with that. Is there a second for Lynn's motion?
I'll second this.
Second by Nelson. Any discussion?
I have one question to that, based on what Tim said. Deferrable being not within the 6-year plan, which is off of this chart, and they've got it placed on here as a dollar amount for that, for the field upgrade.
You know, in the past, so on some of those things that are deferrable, it used to be they didn't necessarily have years tied to them, but they were sort of sharpen your pencil a little bit, work on this one a little bit more when it gets firmer.
I think, again, because of the way the process is working currently, I think putting the recommendation for deferrable but leaving it in that spot is fine. In a perfect world, if you were doing it first and you rated it deferrable, you would then move it outside the 6-year program.
Thank you.
And on the other side of the coin, that happens to be a year where there aren't other capital projects, and it keeps, if they want to spend $1.5 million, $2 million a year on capital, there's a spot for it in that year.
Yeah.
If that's their budget.
My intent was to move it out there with track where it's, everything's there.
Yeah.
Leave
Okay.
it there, you've got it at the fire station.
No.
On 17, 18? Although both of those are going to be bonded, so you wouldn't pay for them that year anyway. Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm combining logic, and that's why I'm saying that.
Well, in the big picture, Tim, I think that the efforts to our capital improvement plan have clearly been like trying to steer the Titanic, but she's swayed 20 degrees so far, and let's keep yanking on that steering wheel, and we'll get there eventually. It's improved. It's improved, and continues to be improved. With that said, is there any other discussion on Lynn's motion with Nelson's second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Only because I think I want it desirable and not deferrable, but otherwise, so I'm opposed, Mr. Chairman.
So
As the
Alistair's
motion.
opposed. Any abstaining? Councillor Koenig is abstaining. So that's 5-1-1 with Mr. Milnes opposed, Mr. Koenig abstaining. That brings us to the town council's CIP.
No, the town's of CIP.
Towns,
Town
yes.
manager's CIP.
Town managers.
Yeah.
And somewhere in my pile of stuff, I'll find my copy of that.
Do you want it here?
I don't think they didn't give us a rating.
All the way down the bottom of the pile.
Show me. Is it? Is that one?
Yeah.
Oh, this one. Got it.
Yeah.
What are the R's and
This doesn't have a rating on it, does it?
R is recommended.
So we can ignore that.
So they haven't made any suggestion at all for the necessaries and. Okay.
Well, I thought that's what the R's and the A's and the N's were.
Those are accounting terms.
Well, so do you want to go down these one at a time? Probably going to have to.
Why don't we go down them one at a time and just do sort of a consensus of the rating, and then we'll vote on the whole thing in one shot. So, with that, let's go quickly through the South Fire Station, item number 1 in 2017-18. How do we want to rate that? Necessary. Necessary, deferrable. Now, necessary is the second level.
This thing, as it is, yes. I don't want it. I think it's wrong.
Okay. Lynn's suggesting necessary. Alistair saying deferrable. What's the will of the rest of the board members?
I think it's probably necessary by that time. I don't know. Deferrable is the other choice.
Yeah.
I think what the town manager suggested is by the time this happens, that there'll be a developed plan for what needs to happen for the town, and with that in mind,
Yeah.
I would give it a necessary in this time frame. So
That's kind of my caveat on it, too.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing more necessaries than deferables. So with that, we'll put an N down here as the consensus. Item 2 is the bridge replacement at McGraw Bridge Road, which is this year.
That's last year.
So that doesn't need a rating. Number 3 is bridge replacement at Bean Road.
That's urgent, Mr. Chairman. We've had to put a weight limit on it.
I agree with urgent there, and I've saw the weight limit and the impact on buses and memos to parents and all that fun. Bridge replacement at Bedford at Babusick Brook.
That's definitely necessary.
Necessary. Bridge replacement at US 3 DW Highway and Babusick Brook.
That's also necessary.
I think it's necessary and probably sooner than later.
As sufficiently as she could have, but
it is.
It is necessary.
It's pushed way out till 18, 19.
Well,
It's
that's because
pushed
of
out
getting
there in order to get funding
from the state.
federal
It's the
government.
80-20 rule.
Yeah, it's the best they can
It would
do
actually,
money-wise.
if all were best and I were king, we'd do that one first. Because that one hydraulically is, whatever, is going to mess things up. And so we're kind of skating a little bit.
But the Bean Road one is unfortunately falling down.
Well, yeah.
And I think if money became available from federal level, somebody would ask for it, and our budget for the next year would look different than
Oh,
it
yeah,
does this year.
yeah.
Item number 6 is a stormwater drainage improvements for basically a level amount throughout the entire capital budget till the end. Maybe goes up a little bit, but
Necessary.
I think it's
to keep with it.
Yep. Paving infrastructure improvements is another one of those sort of consistent, levelized, I think necessary as well.
Keep doing it, yeah.
The gravel road infrastructure is way out there, and it looks like we heard from our town manager it was deferrable.
Well, the reason being they're not sure they want to do it. Plus, they'd have to buy a new grader. Am I right, Tom?
The grader would be to continue to maintain the gravel roads. They're talking about
paving them and making.
They're talking about paving them or making them real roads instead of gravel roads. I think.
To save having to buy a grader.
Deferrable.
Pardon?
Yeah, that would save them buying a grader.
A grader, yeah, to replace the one that they currently have. Yeah.
But we're going to call this deferrable.
Yeah, deferrable on that.
Which is not to be confused with desirable. If all you're putting is a D.
DEF. Okay.
He's doing it properly.
Paving along DW Highway.
That's necessary.
That's definitely necessary.
Yeah, that is.
Infrastructure improvements along Executive Park Drive.
I think that's deferrable too. I don't know what the problem is there.
Is desirable is one level above deferable?
I think it's
Or one
desirable.
below?
Personally, I think it's desirable. I don't know why. I mean, that road is a problem. Eileen was implying there's not enough customers out there, but there are businesses out there, and we can't just ignore them.
Well, no, but everybody goes to the movies there. But the road is in pretty good condition, I think.
Yeah, but every time I drive it, I just about run off the road because I can't see where the heck I'm going, or
There's no lines or painting.
don't know what's happening, or
Paint is not.
I mean, you could do that. I'm just saying that something needs to be done with
That
road.
proposal is to remove the median and to narrow the lanes down to 12 feet and have a parallel parking along the side.
Yeah, I don't give a flip about that. That doesn't solve Tom's problem.
Parking
It
along
wasn't
the
to
side.
remove the median, I don't
Who
think.
needs
Yes,
the
it
parking?
is. Oh, yes, they're taking the median out.
Oh, I don't think anybody needs it, but I don't think we need to spend money to take it away either. It's,
Exactly.
which one is the?
I think work there is necessary, or is desirable, but how much work is maybe debatable.
Parallel parking?
Desirable. I'll go with desirable just to move our night along here.
Deferrable.
Which one's higher than
Desire.
Desire is higher than deferral.
Okay, so desirable is a little higher. We got 2 desirables and a deferrable.
Deferrable, yeah.
Anybody else? Desiree?
I like deferrable.
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 Okay, that's more deferables than desirables, so let's go with that. Highway garage renovation replacement, urgent.
Urgent.
Yeah.
Is there something higher than that?
No,
That's
Super urgent.
That's
Wire road intersection improvements.
That's tied to the Brook and DW Highway Bridge as well.
So then,
So that's
Well,
necessary.
it's desirable.
I think it's more desirable.
No, it's not.
We-
It's not
That's a
bad
terrible
junction as it
intersection.
is.
What?
Wait,
It's that
It's the
junction works
intersection.
pretty well. I don't know why everybody get excited about it.
Wire Road at DW Highway?
Yeah.
The
You're
only
the one that's complained about that.
No, I've never complained about it.
Yes,
I'm
you have.
complained about it because they want to put bloody traffic lights in it.
You've said turning there is a nightmare.
okay, so
No,
in that
no, no,
case,
no, 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 I haven't.
So what's below desirable?
deferrable.
It's desirable.
Leave it as desirable then.
Yes, okay.
Desirable. Okay. Desirable for number 12. Number 13, Turkey Hill Road, Babusick Lake intersection. I think that they've described some accidents, but basically they're talking about 12 and 7 years, so less than 2 a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's enough.
You get more
wait,
accidents.
wait.
Actually, you get far more accidents where the road where Amherst Road meets
Tur-
up with
Turkey Hill?
With Turkey Hill, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Meeting House of Amherst is far more dangerous. More accidents there than anywhere else.
Where you gotta
Meeting
do that
house
little
in
jog
Amherst?
to get on.
Yeah, that jog thing. It causes a hell of a lot of accidents.
Wait. What jog thing?
If you're on Amherst Road, you've got what's it?
Oh, the triangle?
Not the triangle.
There's Natticut
Something
coming
like
down there. There's Meeting, and there's Amherst. That little area there is a nightmare for
Yeah,
accidents.
everybody that wants to go to Home Depot comes here, takes that quick left and goes up here.
And then somebody comes up because there's trees here. It's actually, if you don't stop and really look, you're going to get hit.
I drive that intersection every day. I
So
live
do
right up the
I.
hill.
So do I.
So Turkey Hill, Babusick, desirable?
Yeah, we're not going to fix that intersection. We're just saying that that's
The other one is deferrable.
Turkey Hill is deferrable.
No, I disagree.
For
I think
desirable.
it's desirable. If
Desirable?
we have accidents, if people are getting hurt, I think we should do
Do
something to fix
something.
it. And you can't say, well, 12 and 7 years is not enough. I mean, that's people. It's property. It's,
Well,
Yeah.
no question it's people, but we don't necessarily have a comparison to say that this is the most dangerous intersection in town. And I think if we're going to say people, we would pick the most dangerous
well,
one
I think
in
the
town.
reason that it's being discussed is that it's considered one of the more dangerous intersections in town.
I guess that's an assumption that you can make. I didn't hear that in the presentation. But anyway,
I agree with desirable.
Desirable's fine.
and it's a good way. I'm okay
Yeah.
with desirable. I'm okay with it. It's
All
fine.
right.
Desirable is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Griffin Street boat ramp access is way out there. It's a low dollar
Yeah.
amount.
Desirable.
Yeah,
Desirable. The other boat ramp, Severance Bridge canoe launch ramp,
same thing.
Same thing.
Nice
desirable.
to do.
Yeah, and I think they're really not that expensive, so maybe they fit in somewhere else, but who cares? Chamberlain Bridge rehabilitation and the sidewalk, I think, is urgent.
Mm.
Absolutely.
I'll go with that.
Sewer line extension, Sunset Shores.
That's being done.
That's done this year, so we don't have to vote on that.
All right.
Um,
Easy peasy.
Parking lot repaving at the library.
Necessary?
Well, it's necessary as a maintenance of the parking lot so it
Yeah.
doesn't deteriorate beyond.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be made so it's not so it's safe.
So call it necessary. Okay.
Okay. Necessary on 18. 19, library HVAC.
Yeah.
Is
So-
there something wrong with it?
They just
No, it's
replaced
way
that
up.
thing.
It's replacing. It's just weary.
But they have
They
it
just-
out in
they just put in a new
2021.
HVAC.
Yeah, it's way up.
She didn't talk about it.
Desirable
They
or
didn't talk
deferrable for that one? Because they've got it at the same time they're talking about the placeholder for a new library.
Yeah, and then although the library is just a placeholder, I'm sure it's one or the other, but I think that puts it into the desirable or deferrable category.
Deferrable. When both is sprinkler and HVAC.
Everybody's happy with deferrable?
I mean, deferrable, we can figure out what they're gonna do about a new library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the sprinkler system in the existing library as well as the new library probably fall in the same category. Sprinkler system deferrable?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just said.
And the new library building, deferrable.
Definitely.
Definitely.
And the athletic fields.
New fields?
Placeholder deferrable.
Well, they're certainly desired.
I think they're desirable, actually.
There have been several reports
Yeah, I think we
created
should
and
have
accepted
those.
saying that we need more fields.
They are, although I'm not sure, I've read those reports, I'm not sure I agree with their methodology.
Station.
But since it's not a vote for next year's budget, call it whatever you want. Desirable. Wastewater, Executive Park Drive Pump Station.
I think they're all desirable, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, they're all necessary.
Necessary.
Sorry, they're all
To
necessary.
meet our state permit fees.
Yeah, we've got to do that.
Oh, it's the state that pushes them out that far then?
And that is all of the
Well,
items?
No, but by the time we can get around to it in our user fees, it's going to be that far out. And we're going to have a state permit to reestablish around that time period.
Okay, so everybody's happy with the ratings that we gave?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
Because there is no
with respect to that?
legislature.
I make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a
Desiree makes a motion.
I'm making a motion. I'm making it. I make a motion that we approve the capital improvement ratings as indicated on our major approved projects. As discussed. Thank you.
Is there a second for that motion? I'll second. Second by Alistair. I saw him first. The one bit of discussion I have on that before we vote is it has been our habit in the past to include in a memo a recommendation about sidewalks, and that be a part of the consideration for bridges and pavement, non-binding, but a memo type thing.
I think that you may or may not need to do that this year, because I know that, at least Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, the council is aware of the sidewalk and pedestrian committee's work that's ongoing, and I expect that would be then taken into account for future CIPs.
I don't see any harm in including it as a planning board recommendation as well.
Yeah, and it was very
You
gently
can't tell 'em.
worded in the past to say, as the projects come forward where there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to consider it, please
Yeah.
Please do so.
keep it in
Yeah.
mind, kind of a thing. That's basically
I
what
would
we're
like that. I think we should do that.
How does everybody else feel about that? I support that. Nelson supports it. Desiree?
It's in there.
Okay, we got it. All in favor of approving the CIP recommendations with the sidewalk recommendation in a memo, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 700. That, let's defer.
Mr.
our
Chairman, I
minutes
make a
for our
motion that
next-
we defer the minutes till the next meeting.
Don't need a motion. All right.
Don't need a motion. In that case, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Desiree. All in favor of adjourn? Say aye.
Good girl.
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, 700. Don't forget to turn your microphones off.